Most actors hate the sound of their voice. How do you, as a dialect coach, help them get over that and start to have confidence of how they sound without feeling insecure or self-conscious about it?
The first thing is I make them promise me that they will not listen to themselves for a good 3 to 4 weeks while we're working. So that they don't get caught up and trapped into the preconceived notions of their voices. Because basically, what they're hearing is a notion of themselves and not the real deal. And so, what I do is I train the real deal, meaning the breath, relaxation, the melody in your voice, and the story. It's all about the story being the star. So if you take your attention and your fears and your angst and anxieties away from your voice and put all of that energy into the story, then the story becomes the star. And so when they're telling the story and breathing and relaxing, a whole different vibration starts happening. They start rising to the demands of the story because the story is the star. And 2 to 3 weeks in, then I say, okay, go and listen to yourself. Listen to this one. Listen to this most current, most recent iteration of your voice. And then I have them listen to the first recording of the voice because we record, but I don't have them listen. And the difference is night and day because you got to get out of your head. You got to let the voice be. I say just let it do what it do. Let it be what it's going to be. And what I'm going to give you is tools to create the best version of that.
So when an actor first comes into your office or your studio, what do you find their misconceptions are about a dialect coach?
Well, it, it all depends on the level of training that they're at. Let's talk about the novice, the person that's coming in. They really think that I am going to change the essence of who they are. Because a lot of times, by the time an actor comes to me, someone has said, you need to go to a voice coach. You need to work on your voice, or you need to work on your diction. You need to work on your instrument. It's not like an acting class. Every actor knows that they have to be in class. My work is different. I liken what I do to you going to your primary care doctor and they recommending a specialist. I'm the specialist. I'm the one that your acting teacher recommends. And so by the time you get to me, someone has recommended that something is not right, or that's how they perceive it, that something is wrong, something's up. What am I? I'm not, wait, what? I don't sound right or good. So they come in a lot with, I don't want to say a chip on the shoulder, but a little bit apprehensive at best. A chip on their shoulder, and I've seen that at the very worst. But uh, what I do is offer that I'm not trying to change you. That is not what this is. What this is giving you tools, adding to what you already have, not taking away. Even if you have a really a thick dialect or an accent, I don't use the terminology accent reduction or accent modification because I don't want to modify that. I want you to keep that intact. What I want to do is add to that. I want to add to your vocabulary of if in fact your character is from this place, then they would say it this way. If in fact there's something about your voice that people have been commenting on over the course of your career and it's distracting and it takes away from the story, that's the important thing.
If Hollywood cast by voice alone, would yours even get a call back? Well, today I am talking with voice coach extraordinary, the one who coaches all the Hollywood stars. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them, Miss Denise Woods. And she has some incredible tips to help you with your voice today. If this is your first time here, my name is Lydia Nicole, and this is Acting Smarter Now. How did mentorship influence your confidence and your growth?
I swear by mentorship. You absolutely have to see it and see someone do it and have someone who is doing it believe in you. It's crucial. My first mentors were, again, here comes the story. I was Miss Black Teenage America in 1972 for New York State. And it was a turning point for me. 1972 was the year I entered into the High School of Performing Arts. That summer before, I used the same monologue that I used to get into performing arts. I used it for the competition. And I will say this, I won that pageant. The famous Cheryl Lee Ralph was the first runner up. And
Wow.
I've known her since we were 14 years old. I was 14, she was
Wow.
15.
And this was Hal's pageant, right?
This was
This
Hal
was Hal's
Jackson's
pageant.
pageant.
That's what I was thinking. I went trying to find it because I said, okay, I know about Enid, who was the first Miss Black Teen America, and I know that then it became Talented Teens because I worked
That's
with
right.
Talented Teens. And so, but I love this.
I'm Talented
What a
Teen.
connection. What a
I
connection.
know. This was Hal Jackson's Talented Teen. I was for New York State. And I
Wow.
won, and the competition was steep. But when I won, and I'm going to tell you, Aretha Franklin was there, and she presented me. It was a big deal because Hal Jackson was the man, and all of the people that were, tied in with that pageant were the creme de la creme of New York Black elite. And I got to meet some of the most incredible models, actors, and they just took me under their wing. I was just forced into a world where I looked around and said, okay, so I'm not going to do that, but I will do this. Um, I just had great mentors.
You were in the church at that point. What made you decide you wanted to enter a pageant?
It was my mother. It was my
Wow.
mother. My mother was good friends with our neighbors, and they were talking about their friend's daughter was in this pageant. And my mother says to her friends, how can I get my daughters in this pageant? And that's what it was. My mother got the applications and filled them out. And my sister and I were both in the pageant together.
Wow.
Yes, I won. I
Wow.
won. I won. And my sister can sing. My sister's a gospel singer. And I was the last one to go because my last name is W. And so I was the last one to go because my sister's first name begins with a C and mine is D. And I'm Denise Woods. I was the last contestant to go. And I blew the audience away
Do you remember the monologue?
with the monologue that I did to get into performing arts, that it was a comedy. It was a comedy. It wasn't even a dramatic monologue. It was a comedy. But they later told my sister, my mother, because my mother went to the judges later when we became, when I had the crown and I was going around and making appearances and I was in the Harlem Day Parade. I mean, it was a big deal. And my mother said, "Are you sure you didn't make a mistake? Are you sure you didn't mean Cassandra?" And this is what they said to my mom. They said, your daughter is an extraordinary singer. And she brought the house down. They said, but for your youngest daughter to come behind her and top what she did with comedy, she had the audience rolling with laughter. This little 14-year-old girl had the audience in the palm of her hands. And my mom later told me, that that's what they said because everybody,
Wow.
they said, wait a minute, we just knew the singer. They said, oh no, it wasn't the singer, it was the actress that came behind her and what she was able to do with that audience after her sister just blew them away with her singing voice. Then the baby comes out and blows them away with the comedy act.
Wow.
Yeah. So mentor, they were my first mentors.
So this was Hal and Alice. You
Hal and
had Hal and
Alice.
Alice.
And there
Yes.
was Modine Broughton and Ruth
Yes.
Brown. You
Yes.
remember?
Of course. Yes. I came in a couple years after you, but they were
Yes.
all of them were
All of
still
them were
there.
still a Verly
Mhm.
White, the Whiches.
Yes, still there, still there.
I was
They
because I was in the second one. The first one was Candy Brown. Candy Brown won the first one. I
yeah,
was in the second one,
okay.
and I won
Okay.
the second one.
And then the third year it became Talented
That's
Teen,
right,
but
the third
I
year.
started with them in 75 because I was working at the radio station.
Wow.
I started at 73 working at the station.
Got
And then
you.
uh 75 or maybe the end of 74, maybe it might have been the end of somewhere in between that I started working in the production end of it. Like I would, I
Yes.
would help out and do whatever, get the girls in and out of the rooms, and I did that. And what I saw, how it benefited young girls at that time
It was wonderful.
was it gave them confidence. it
Yes.
it it gave them a sense of not just confidence but of a certain poise that
A
it's like
certain
seeing
voice,
them going from the beginning and then coming out at the end refined, like Pygmalion, like just the transformation
the
that they had.
transformation. You know what it did? It gave us a sense. So it wasn't like a finishing school, although it seemed, because we did transform, but it gave us a wonderful sense of our blackness, of our femaleness, of our power as black women, not just the not just the beauty part, because the beauty part was essential, because a lot of myself, we have self-esteem issues because everything we see in the media says that a little black girl with an afro, because it's 72, we all had afros, and so we espouse to the beauty in blackness, that how to define our broad noses and our darker skin and our natural hair. And it was just what I needed. And they, for the entire year, I was the face of the black teenage girl of New York City,
Mm.
and that was huge.
They changed it from Miss Teenage Black America to Hal Jackson's Talented Teen because they wanted to um, not rely on how the person looked, but what they brought. And it became very important moving forward that it was about their talent and their gift. And having worked that pageant for about 5 years, and then I went on to be a judge, it was the most points you got was for the talent, not for the beauty. And I so appreciated that. So I'm happy that I got to speak to somebody on the other end of it to see how it affected you.
It was everything. It really was the beginning of my self-esteem, of building my self-esteem, of being able to speak to young girls in communities that I was from, because I grew up in the projects on the Lower East Side, and I was always different. I'm sure, as artists, I was always the different one, and and my difference, I can look back now and see what it was. I marched to the beat of my own drum because I was an artist. I didn't know what it was. I just knew I was different. And when you're in those kinds of communities where we kind of rely on each other to sort of be the same, to march the same, to subscribe to a similar way of thinking, I did not. And so a lot of times I felt ostracized by my community, and I was bullied a lot until I won that pageant. I was bullied as a
Mm,
child because
mm,
I was not, I was so different. And you know what? It was spirit. I was a spiritual child. And that's what my memoir is talking about. Like my mother, the women in my mother's church would say that she's different. There's something about this one that's different. There's something about this one that's different. And it was, but that difference wasn't celebrated in my community. That difference made me feel ostracized until I won the pageant and until I got to PA, performing arts, and found my tribe, because we were all different. We all came together in all of our communities. We were all the different ones. And when we got to performing arts, man, it was nirvana. We found our tribe because we were all just different and didn't quite know what it was. It was art, it was artistry.
And then when you got to Juilliard, you had another mentor who you actually credit in the book. Can you talk about what he did for you?
Yes, Tim Monich is his name. And when we were at Juilliard, and particularly in the voice and speech department, which is where you kind of feel it, because when people talk about and the way you sound, and I'm just going to echo this, when people talk about the way you sound in a pejorative way, be it overtly or covertly, and you feel as a student you can't do anything about it because it's Juilliard, because they're right and I'm wrong, and they are the creme de la creme and I came to get what they have. There was a teacher that came to Juilliard who was just a little bit older than we were. And he was a white man from California. I say that because he had a hang 10 shirt on. And I'm from the projects in New York. He's from the beaches of Southern California. And I said, "What's hang 10?" And he had to tell me what hang 10 was. I was like, "Oh, okay." But Tim Monich was the 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 angel that we needed at the time to help all of us find our voices within this paradigm. Gave us the permission, because once the grande dame of speech retired, and she was in her 80s in 1975. She was in her 80s. She was our teacher. She was the grande dame of American speech. And of course, it was mid Atlantic, and she spoke like that. And so clearly, everyone was talking like this. And it was the Juilliard way of talking. And it was so far fetched. I mean, even when I was kind of I can remember doing an exercise one time and trying to talk like this and just would start laughing. I just went in front of the class and they would start laughing. I would just go, "This is preposterous. Who talks like this? Who talks like this?" And she asked me to leave her class. So, but then Tim comes in and he became that teacher that we all needed, that we all look to figure out how to navigate these waters, um, and find ourselves within these waters. And then Tim became, after graduation, and when Juilliard invited me to come back to teach at Juilliard, it was because of Tim Monich. I didn't know that they were looking for a voice and speech teacher. When they reached out to me, they just said they were looking for a new faculty member. And I thought that they were looking for an acting teacher because, okay, I was a good voice and speech student, but I can't imagine you want me to teach it. I can teach acting because I've been doing it. And when I got in town, because at the time when they approached me, I was doing the Canadian production of a Broadway show, I was acting. And they came to me and said, "We want you to join the voice and speech faculty." I said, "What?" And they said, "Tim Monich thinks you are the absolute best person for this job." And
Hmm.
what we're doing, Denise, we're going to tell you straight off, we need more people of color on this faculty. It's a travesty that we've not done it sooner. And when we started looking, Tim Monich, you were the first person that Tim Monich recommended. And
Wow.
I know. I mean, and by the '90s, look at all the black students that had come through the halls of Juilliard. I was the first one that came to mind, and I'm just indebted to him. My very first big movie, which was Will Smith's Ali, they called him to do the film, and he he said Scorsese has called me to do Gangs of New York, because he by this time he's a huge dialect coach. I mean, most of the clients that I have now are because of Tim Monich, because Tim is the man, was in the night in he was the dialect coach, and black and white would come to him, and people would go to him, and he'd go, I'm honored that you're coming to me, but you really need to see Denise Woods. I got Common that way. I mean, Common's people contacted him, and he said, I'm not your person, Denise Woods is. I can tell you a list of people that would come to him because he's the man. And he'd go, I'm not your person. She is.
And
And
you're the
so,
woman. He's
yeah,
the man and you're the
and
woman.
I'm the woman. And so, and so I felt it appropriate to dedicate the book to my mother, my Aunt Sylvia, and Tim Monich.
That's
Yes.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, I want to pivot here and talk about, you have worked with a bunch of actors on biopics, with their speech and their voice. How difficult is that, as opposed to just working with them on dialect for a fictitious character?
You're absolutely right. There is something very, very distinct about doing a biopic, and it becomes even more distinct if the subject is well known or not. If the subject is of a different period, and we have no recordings of how they sounded. Now, that can be liberating and constraining at the same time. The liberating part is that no one can definitively say how this person sounded, because all the people that heard them are no longer with us, and there are no recordings of their voices. So we have a little leeway to to create based on how we can approximate the sound of that generation, based on the enslaved narratives that we currently have in the Library of Congress, which is what I use as a hallmark of period pieces. And then I get the specificity, the regional specificity. So there is much more. I've done Harriet Tubman, I've done Bass Reeves, and clearly there's a little more leeway, artistic freedom to create, to curate a sound based on what we based on research.
So now, do you actually go to Washington to the Congress, the Library of Congress, to start to get that information, or are you able to get it online?
Oh, it's all available online. But before the online presence of all of this wonderful material, and the wonderful invention of YouTube, you really had to go and do research. And I've mentioned the Schomburg Library. I've never had to go to DC to the Library of Congress, because there are archival information that is very useful, and can be at our disposal at the Schomburg Library. But now that we have, an online presence for everything, you just click. You just have to know what to put into the search engine to get what you're looking for, and everything is pretty much at your disposal. So that now that it's easier to access, and we have the leeway to approximate what it is, the most difficult is doing a dialect that everybody knows, that everybody does a version of. Everybody knows how this person sounds. Everybody on the planet knows how Muhammad Ali sounds. So you have to be able to work with the actor, with the director, in lockstep with the director and the actor at every. I work with the actor all the time, but for Ali, I was in lockstep with the director so that we wouldn't go too far left or too far right.
And the director was
Was Michael Mann.
who did Miami Vice.
That's right. That's
Yes.
right. That's right. And he wanted elements of Will's voice in it. He said, "I don't want you to do an impersonation of Ali. It's been done. I want to hear elements of Will." So you've got to honor what the director is looking for. Make sure that he's in lockstep the whole time, listening to your working, because we prepped for 3 months prior to filming,
Wow.
and it was wonderful. I got really really close to Will and his family, and it was a beautiful time, because we really wanted to nail it, and that he did.
And as a dialect coach, you do spend a lot of time with the actor. A lot, especially with a film, you have more
Yes.
time to prep. And so you talk a lot about Mahershala and how you've worked with him, and he was the one in pursuit of you because of Hidden Figures, seeing you working. And so from that, you guys have cultivated this incredible relationship because he seeks you out every time he's doing something. You had mentioned, you had asked him how he starts with the character. What has he taught you as a teacher that you now give to other students?
Wow. Well, first of all, we have to understand that he has two Oscars. Two. Um, two. He's a genius. And when I say this, you see how humble I become when I talk about him, because he's so humble. He's such a genius. He's such a purist. And usually, pure geniuses have a tendency to be a little bit erudite and sometimes border on arrogance, because they are so myopic when it comes to their art and their craft that they can sometimes lose a sense of their humanity, and sometimes can become difficult. I mean, we've seen that historically with people like Maria Callas, the genius. Um,
Loved her.
oh my
I
gosh.
still do.
Oh my gosh. You know, um, and he is so not like that. Mahershala leads from a place of love. Mahershala leads from a place of spirituality that transcends religious dogma, because we all know he's Muslim, and we have wonderful conversations about Islam, because I know very little about Islam. I really do. I mean, I have since gotten more informed thanks to him, but I didn't know a lot about Islam. And in between takes on the television series that we did, which was True Detective, we were in Arkansas for months, and this is where we forged an incredible bond, and not just he and I, but his wife and I, because I was hungry to know more about Islam. I was hungry for his sense of a practice that he is committed to, a rigor that he is committed to, that shows up in every aspect of his life. And on set, it he prays 5 times a day. And he doesn't make an announcement of it. We just knew Mahershala's praying, and we waited. He knew everybody's name, from every PA, everybody in craft service, everybody in on the soundstage, the painters on the soundstage, everybody, and was genuinely concerned to know how their day is. How are you doing? How's your mother? Um, just this wonderful sense of humanity that I have seen how it morphs into creativity at a higher level, a vibration at a higher level. I have also seen how genius creative geniuses, and I won't mention the artist's name, but the self-destruction element of that, not Mahershala, another artist that I'm talking about, in juxtaposition to what I'm talking about with Mahershala, how the self-destruction in this person added to his genius.
Mm.
And I've never mentioned this person, so this person's name is never mentioned in any of the material that I write about. But I want it was just so interesting to me because I've worked with this person a couple of times, and we know, because we've been around the block, we're New Yorkers, we know self-destruction when we see it, even if they're trying to mask it, we know it. But at the end of the day, I'm looking at it and going, wow, gosh, it just, the hodgepodge of internal angst and stuff that hasn't been dealt with
The trauma, how it plays out over and over.
over
Yes,
and over, and then it is
yes,
exacerbated by
yes,
behavior,
yes.
and how it shows up artistically is just mind boggling. And so there's no
Mhm.
judgment here. There's no I just see in juxtaposition
Observing.
of
You're
just
observing.
observing,
You're observing.
observe.
Yeah.
But with Mahershala, it is um, it is a deep way of life. It is a calling. It is a ministry.
Made a reference to having to learn. So, as a teacher, you are perpetually learning different things because, in order to teach somebody a dialect, you have to learn it, you have to absorb it, you have to take it on. And I don't think many of us really um, focus on the fact that good teachers, great teachers, genius teachers are always filling their well creatively, are always learning things. And so um tell me, when you are looking to get when you're looking for your student or your client to get them what they need, what is your process of uncovering
Mm.
those things?
Hmm. I don't Google people before I work with them. And even if they are known people, I don't do the research of them. I come in because I want to get everything I need from them, and then I Google. I don't want their accolades, what they've done, to inform that first meeting, because I need to have a sense of who they are, not what they've done. And then I defer to how they work. I don't put my style of work on them, because everybody works differently. And that's how I learn, because I learn new styles and new ways of working that add to my pedagogical style. Pedagogy for me is everything. My style, being malleable, being able to fit and make my client, my student comfortable, to meet them where they are, to buy into their learning style.
Does that take the first time you meet them? Is does it take a few times of getting to uh sit with them? Do you then start to say, how do you like to work?
Nope, first time. First time. the first time. I like you. It's about asking the right questions. You know, some people like to work um, theoretically. They like theory. They want the phonetic sounds, the phonetic symbols. They want to read the dialect phonetically. And some people want to work by ear. And it's not that one way is better than the other. I know all of the ways of working, and I'm comfortable in meeting you where you are and not making you feel that you need to know this in order to make it stick. No, i I then what I do is I categorize the steps that we and the process, the steps to the process. So if in fact it's a dialect, okay, I'm gonna do Trini. I'm gonna do a girl from Trinidad, and and the rhythm is so important. It is so important. And so then we start with the rhythm. We start with the rhythm first, and then what I do is I give them, music from Trinidad. I tell them a little bit about the culture and why Trini sounds a little bit different than Jamaica because of the Indian influence in Trini. So you got the Indians and you got the African, you got the brown people, and you got the black people, and you give them a little bit of the background and a little bit of story, and then I start with the rhythm because that once you sort of get into the rhythm and you start playing with the rhythm, then I bring on the notes. And I speak in musical terms quite often. Then we start playing with the notes and and being very specific, and not just only being specific but being consistent. That's the key. You can't come back. You can't. If you say can't one time, you can't say can't the next time. You got to say consistently. If you're going to say can't, or if you do the British, I can't. We keep it consistent. We make some decisions, and we keep them consistently.
I love that. And you said the rhythm, and when you were saying the rhythm, I was thinking the music, but I was thinking the music of the people, the music of the culture, how important as an actor it is to know that music, that because you are
Yes,
playing in that arena, you need to know that as well.
absolutely,
Just
absolutely,
as Stella Adler, I studied with Stella many years ago. She was the grand dame, and Stella, her way of teaching was you had to know the history before you could even read the lines. If you didn't know where the character came from, if you did not know the time
absolutely,
period, you could not start to memorize the material. So
absolutely.
I love what you're saying.
Something as seemingly ludicrous, and I say seemingly because it's not. The region, where what part of the world are they from? Is it what's the weather like? Because what, if it's the south, it's slow. It slows the tempo down because it's so hot. If it's in a cold place, what does it do when people are doing like this bundled up for the most of the jaws are tighter? Why does Chicago have that sound? Why do New Yorkers talk like this? Why do we talk? What is it? So I get into the anthropological, cultural aspects of why people sound the way they sound. Before we even start, we talk, we go in, we take a deep dive into culture, because to Stella's point, people sound the way they sound for reasons, and it's incumbent upon us to take those deep dives. And the wonderful thing about all the actors that I work with, and I have to bring David Oyelowo into this because he's from London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts, and so our training is very similar. Mahershala is from NYU grad program, so our training is very similar because a lot of the faculty at Juilliard taught at NYU. And so we have these vocabularies that we now are very, very fluent in, and and it makes the job yummy because you have a vocabulary. We speak the same language. But then you get a person like who I'm currently working with. Amazing Omar Epps. Brilliant actor. Brilliant. Brilliant. And, he came straight out of performing arts high school and started working, like literally hit the ground running. I do believe Juice was his first film right out of high school, and he hasn't stopped working. And he has a wonderful sense of working that is so New York, that is so seasoned, because his grad school, his training ground was on set. So he works like a working actor, if you know what I
Mm.
mean.
What I love about you as a teacher, um, they're not only getting you as a dialect coach, a voice coach, they're getting the totality of everything you bring as an actor. So you are
Yes,
able to not only give them the dialect, but also give them mannerisms. I'm assuming that they get a whole package. As you're talking, I'm being reminded of the dialect coaches that I had, and all they were giving me was here. And as I'm listening to you, you're giving me the world. You are just giving me the totality of the world that this character has to
absolutely.
embody. What a gift.
Absolutely.
That it's a gift.
What I did with Mahershala Ali in True Detective, because he ages 40 years, there's a 40-year span. And so I'll never forget, he said, Denise, I need you. He was the first person that said, Denise, I need you to be in Video Village watching my performance, not just listening to me. He invited me to, because usually I'm just sitting listening, because if I don't see, I hear. And he says, no, 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 you need to watch, because he knew what I was giving, like you said. And he said, Denise, I need you to look at my walk when he ages 15 years, or 40 years, excuse me. And um and he walked, and I said to him, because I'm my mom, I said, you need to focus on what's making you walk like that. You've got pain in your knees or your ankles or somewhere. You've got to locate where the pain is, and focus on the where that pain is or the stiffness is, and that's why you're walking this way. He said, thank you. And then he walked again. I said, that's where I see it's the knees, right? He said, that's exactly where it is. I said, I see it. Because that's what it is. It's not you're getting old. You got pains. You stiff. You can't walk. And so he said, I need you to be on not just headset, but I need you to be in Video Village watching. He gets up off the bed, and he doesn't do this. He doesn't do his hands like this to help him up. He just springs up. And I go to him, I said, what about them knees, boy? What about them knees? You know those knees can't get you up off that bed. You better put your hands down there and help yourself. He's like, oh, thanks, Denise. Thank you. That kind of stuff. It's just so wonderful. So a few months later, I get a call from a very famous person. And I'm like, hi, how did you get my number? And she said, Mahershala told me, quiet as it's kept, Denise is an acting coach. And I need you to help me with a part, but I don't need a dialect. I just need you to help me with some acting choices. I said, I would love to help you with some acting choices. And that's what he called. They were talking, and he said, call Denise Woods. She doesn't announce it, but she's a great acting coach.
Hmm.
Call her. And we had the best time. It was what she just needed, some ideas, and we just shot it around. So it's specificity, specificity, specificity. And that's what this work is all about. And the actors who subscribe to that type of work gravitate toward me, because I'm not just talking about this. I'm talking about the whole thing. I'm talking about the inner life. I'm talking about the total.
Yeah, because it's all of it. If you're acting, it's all of it. I was reminded of the story of Taraji P. Henson on the Tyler Perry movie, and you were there to coach her, and she told Tyler to give you the job of the therapist. I watched it. What a gift gave her. Even though we never see you, we only hear you. It was as an actor, I could see why she wanted you, because you fed her in a way that somebody else wouldn't have. And so um you can add whatever you want to it. I just wanted to highlight that moment because watching it, I was like, yeah, yeah.
It was intense. It really bonded Taraji and I because I never come into a space. I learned early on that I stay in my lane. I never come and sit in Video Village and act like I belong there. I'm very humble. I typically wear black on set, even if it's in the summertime. Well, in the summertime I can't because I'm in the South, and it's blazing hot. But I try to get in and get out. I try to do my job and just get out. Uh, I have a story to add to that. I was working with Hallie on her directorial debut, and and she said to me, Denise, I'm directing and I'm looking at everybody else's performance, but I need you to look at mine. And I said, I got you, sis. She said, because you're not just my dialect coach. I need you to watch me. I can't see me. And I'm watching her. So I go in and give her a note, and we do another take. And one of the producers came over to me, who saw me go in and give the note. She comes over to me and she says, what did you tell Hallie? I said, that's between me and Hallie. And she said, because the takes were so different. Between the take before you went in and the take after you went in were night and day. She said, I see why you are who you are. I mean, and she and I are the best of friends. She produced Dirty Dancing.
Mm,
Yeah, she's an amazing human being, and we've become dear friends from that moment. But
mm.
but the Taraji moment was, we made sure that the actress that was hired was taken care of, because I that was my concern, was what are you going to do with the actress? She was Mr. Perry said, don't worry, we'll take care of her. It was wonderful validation of some acting chops. When a star says, "I can you do this with me?" It was really it was a wonderful moment for me.
Well, it's also a trust, right? You had mentioned earlier, I had written down a couple of words of what acting is, and it is having faith, confidence, and grace.
Yeah.
But it's also trusting, because you have to trust your partner, especially when you're doing something so difficult. And what she was doing was really difficult because it ties the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. That monologue could have sucked eggs, but but she felt safe with you. And because not every actor working with another actor is going to be gracious and say, hey, I'm here to serve you. They're here to serve themselves.
What happens in those moments, because they're usually played by a day player, and they are coming and on set and meeting the star for the very first time. They are nervous. They are preoccupied with the fact that they are working with a star.
And that comes with going back to what you started with, the relaxation, coming
Yes.
on set, relaxing enough to be present to what the other actor is giving you. What is the
Oh
gift that
my
they are
gosh,
giving you,
girl.
right? It goes that relaxation, because you've got to, it doesn't matter who the actor is, you're hired to bring all of you to it. And you
Absolutely.
can't bring all of you if that person is nervous,
That's right.
right? You have to, I don't care who you are. We're going toe to toe.
That's
Let's go.
right. Let's
And
go.
I don't
Let's
know
go.
if that is a New York thing, but I've always been, it's like, I don't care who you are. Let's go. What you got? Because I got stuff too. Let's go.
That's what it was with me and Taraji. That's what it was. That's exactly what happened with me and Taraji, because she's from DC. I'm from New York. It was like, what you got, what you got, what you got, what you got, you know? and and it just served the scene. It really did. But to your point, that was the third project we had done. We've been Taraji and I were the only people that didn't go home for Easter one weekend. We were filming through the Easter weekend, and everybody left. And she and I were the only ones that stayed. And we hung out the entire weekend. And and it was just beautiful. And I made reservations. This is a great story, because I made reservations, and I made reservations in her name. And she said, Denise, you can't make reservations in my name. I go, why not? She said, because paparazzi will be around. I was like, oh, that's right, you're a star. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I don't see these people as stars. They become my friends. And that's when you go in and you feel um, this comfortability, and you can do the work, and relaxation is so key and crucial. And so what do you do the moments before? What do you do those moments before you show up on set? Or what do you do the moments before you audition? Everybody talks about what to do once you book the job. I like to focus on the audition process, because no one in drama school taught me how to book a job. I did not know how to book a job. The technique was all about the play once you got the job, the scene work and the scene study and this. It's like, well, how do you get there? And I like to talk. I've really sort of shifted my focus to everyday actors. And I say everyday actors who are out here doing the work. The roles aren't coming to them. They're going out and they're hustling for the roles. And now I've shifted to self tape, what that looks like, how you show up in a space where you've got the first 30 seconds to get them. Your choice has to be so strong in that first 30 seconds. So, to your point, I am not just a dialect coach, I'm an acting coach. And people show up because it, it really is about the voice. You cannot speak about the voice if your acting choice isn't strong, right? Come on. How can you talk about the voice if you got a shoddy acting choice, if your choice is weak?
Well, it's going to show up in your throat
There we go.
and in your eyes,
There
right?
you
Those are the
go.
two places where it shows up. Because if you don't know your stuff, you're not going to be confident in speaking it,
That's
and your eyes are
right.
going to look like this. Like
Like the
I can
devil in the
always tell.
headlights.
Yeah, I can always tell when an actor doesn't know what they're doing, because their eyes they kind of want to bug out. Um, uh,
Exactly.
George,
Exactly.
a good example is George Lopez. When he first started on his series, I would cringe for him, because I would see him like this. I go, now you don't look like that, George. You don't look like that. Let's not do that, George. You gotta be confident. And so, but that's where it is. We either believe you because the eyes are telling us the truth, or we don't believe you because the eyes are saying, I don't believe this. I don't believe what I'm saying. It's not in my body.
That's
It's
right.
stuck here in my throat.
It's stuck
It's
here
stuck
in my
here in
throat.
my back. So it's just interesting. I feel it necessary to ask this question for that actor who is getting jobs, who is getting just a couple of lines, and they are going up against the star, and they don't have the chutzpah that we have. They don't have that. I don't care who you are. You with me? How can they come to set? How can they come, and what is it that they can do to relax themselves, to be present in the moment, to put out all the stuff that's going on around them? Because sometimes, if you're starting out as an actor, or you don't get enough work, and you come onto a set, especially a high level set, where there's a million people behind those cameras. There's talking, there's all this stuff, and now you got to deliver uh, uh, with a big actor, and you have maybe three lines to give, And the director is not going to give you another opportunity to do it, but you got to nail it in the first take, because that might be a wrap.
You got that right, sis. And I know right off the bat, because I've seen it, you have to come to set and you usually are in a tent. And I say a tent because it's nighttime and the elements. I'm thinking the worst case scenario, or a tent because the sun is shining and it's hot, and then a tent that has a cooling device in it. But you're usually in the tent with all of the day players, all of the people that have lines. The actors that are the most successful are the actors that don't become chatty on set. You are not there to make friends. You are not there to be affable, to start conversations around craft service, chatting it up. I've even seen people try to chat over and make their way over to where the leads are sitting, and even kind of sidle up near the producers at Video Village. Now, clearly, that that is off limits, and very few people do that. But what people do is they get in. It's there's a lot of time. There's a lot of downtime. Between takes and when you show up. I would say bring something that you can get in the zone with, that you are, because when you're in that environment, no one thinks that you're being rude by disassociating yourself and staying in the zone. No one will think you're being rude. No one will think anything of you. And if they do, so be it. Because what you want to do is you just want to be malleable. You want to be in a space where you are completely free of tension, of preconceived notions, and being able to focus, because there's going to be a lot of things thrown at you. You're going to have to hit your mark. You're going to have to deliver your line. It may be 3 lines and you think, oh, it's just 3 lines. Oh no, but at any given time, the director might say, I want him to have, can you hand him this knife, and can you just do that with the knife? And there's so many things being thrown at you potentially. So when you're coming in and you're chatting it up with all the rest of the people on set, and you're standing over at craft service, and then all of this information is being given you, and you can't coordinate. You must stay, because I do. People know that my job, for instance, I go in and I give notes between takes. When the actor comes down, that's when hair and makeup and I go in and give notes. Or even if hair and makeup says I'm good and I hear something, I'll sneak in. I have a good relationship with the first AD. I don't bother the director. I have the first AD, and I'll give him a clue and say, "Can I go in?" He goes, "Wait, let's hold for Denise. Denise needs to go in," and then I'll go in and come out. And so when usually when they're filming, everybody sort of, the team sits back, because they've already done their hair and makeup, they've already done their touch-ups, and so they're sitting back. But that's when I'm listening, that's when I'm really working. And so people know not to bother me. I'm on headset, I'm working. Or even if at Video Village, when the producers are doing something and that's downtime for them, it's not downtime for me. And so the point I'm making is that when you get on set, you need to stake out that this is, I'm working. I've got my earbuds in because I'm working. I'm off reading because I'm working. I'm prepping. I'm going to tell you the best case of this I just saw recently was Giancarlo Esposito is in the film that Mahershala is doing now, and this was his first day on set. And I'm going to tell you, this man stayed off by himself. He didn't come in and introduce himself. He didn't come in and he didn't sit in his chair. He sat off, and one of the PAs, he sat off like on a box. And one of the PAs said, do you want me to get you a chair? He said, no, I'm fine. He just stayed off to himself and did the scene and did the scene and did the scene. and did the scene. And once the scene was over, and he had a little scene after that, then he started talking. Then he was like, okay, y'all, how you doing? You know, it was beautiful to see an actor prepare like that, to get in the zone. And because we're all been at this, it's not our first time at the rodeo, we give space to that. The way I told you, we give space for Mahershala to pray. We give space for Mahershala to, you know, Mahershala has to say, why are you all, come on, guys, you don't have to leave. Because when he shows up, everybody just sort of gives space. You know, we just clear out to give space. He goes, you don't have to, I'm good, you know. And then when he needs it, he'll tell you.
And how to give space to yourself when you only have a couple of lines, it not just in the on the set, but when if you have a physical audition, to do the
Yeah,
same thing, because we don't take the auditions as seriously as we should sometimes. You made a statement about how hard in your book, you made a statement that um that the actors who are on top because they have such a work ethic. And so for the young actor, or the novice actor, because sometimes you have actors coming in their 30s or 50s, they're starting out at they didn't grow up in acting, but now they're getting into it. How uh, how can they start to take on a work ethic which raises up their game? Because it's not just about acting. You could be very talented and never work, but it's about your preparation. You talked about preparation before, how important preparation is. And preparation starts before you get on set, before you get to the studio, before you get to the location. Your preparation is important. So, can you speak on that?
absolutely. And I'm going to speak about it in the context of what I do and how I prepare, because you would think that I am performing with the actor when I show up to set with them, meaning I am there when they are called. So if their call time is is 4:30 a.m., I come at 5 while they're in hair and makeup. Because even if an actor doesn't want me to work with them in hair and makeup because they need that downtime, anything can happen. Anything can happen that the times are pushed up, and I just want to be available. Even if they say, Denise, I don't want to work with you in hair and makeup because that's my time. I'm there in case they need me. To be present, to be available, to be um, I I start the night before, because I come from the theater, and everything about theater training is because you don't have another take, because you don't have the luxury of fixing it in post, you know, of ADR. You know what I mean? It's right there. And so everything we do in terms of our our daily behavior, our daily lives are in preparation for that performance when that curtain goes up at 8 o'clock. And heaven forbid if it's a two-show day, you know, it's a two-show, it's a matinee. You have a Friday night, a Saturday matinee, a Saturday night, and then a Sunday matinee. So you've got these 5 performances from Friday to Sunday. So you start preparing for it on Wednesday, Thursday, because you know that you're coming up on a Friday, a 2-day show on Saturday, and a matinee on Sunday. Monday's your day off. But I look at it that way. I come prepared. I come and wait. I come and wait. But this is what I want to share with the novice. When I get on set, I look and create relationships, not networking. Uh-uh. Relationships, real relationships with people. And then I ask them what they do. And it started with the sound guys because I'm with the sound guys lockstep with sound. And it's fascinating. And what it did was it just gave me this voracious appetite for filmmaking. I wow. And so I'd ask, what's this? What's this? What's this? At the appropriate times, not while they're working. But then I went and befriended a DP, and based on the fact that he started talking about his kids one day because his kids were in London and he missed them, and I'm a mom, he's a dad, we're talking about kids. And I went to him and asked him one day, what made, because I'm at Video Village and I see this shot and it's just gorgeous. I said, what made you, how do you see that? And so he starts telling me. And then I go and befriend myself with a costume designer on a show because I was blown away. I was just, these costumes are just yummy. Where did you get the inspiration? How do you do your research? So I developed this voracious appetite for all of the departments. So I'm not just an actor. I'm a part of a larger vision. I'm a part of a whole. And so the more I know about the other parts and the other components, the more I feel committed and connected to the entire whole. And so how do you develop rigor? How do you develop a sense of being present by knowing what it all looks like, by knowing the history? Become a cinephile, watch movies, read about what the great movies, what made great movies great. People would look at Citizen Kane and say, okay, so why is this a great movie? And then when you read the history, the historical context, you go, oh, you mean they were doing innovative stuff that filmmakers had never done before? Quite like Sinners. Why is that a great movie? Find out, figure it out, ask, do the research. A lot of times I think in the and I'm not casting aspersions in any way on younger generations and saying, oh well, when we were doing it, we really wanted to know. Oh no, we were somewhere off in a drugged out induced state. It was the 70s. A lot of us were doing that too. However, what we've learned, because we didn't have the click of a button and social media and the ability to go online and have Google tell us all the things that we had to go to the library and find, we had to search it out. We were really, really hungry. We had voracious appetites, not to just be good, but to know. But the knowing, just the knowing of it. That's what gives you confidence. That's what makes you show up in your full sense of who you are, is the research, the backstory.
Well, you just said something. I think I want to unpack that a minute, because it's not about the networking. It's about caring about what other people do. So, as an actor, our job is to come on set, is to come on stage and be of service. It is not a me thing where people feel like it's all about me, all about my gift. No, your gift is best served when you give it to somebody else. The gift is best served when you care about that person. When I was first starting, I worked on a Neil Simon movie, Max Dugan Returns, with Marsha Mason, and I loved Marsha Mason. She was like, ah, and so I'm playing a student in her class.
What was the name of the film?
Max Dugan Returns.
Oh,
It was
yes.
with, and so I was in her class, and so we're rehearsing and we're doing all this stuff, and camera rolls. You talk about that New York kid. I was present there for her because somehow that is what I was taught. Don't ask me how I got that, but I was taught that you are in a scene. It is not about you. You are with them. It is a fellowship of sorts. You have to,
Yes.
you,
Yes.
you got to connect. You got to
Yes.
connect with that person. So she's doing her monologue. She's doing her thing. And I'm like, this woman ain't looking at me. She wasn't Marsha Mason at that moment. She was just a woman who wasn't looking at me. So I did not start my my stuff until she stopped what she was doing and looked at me. And then I saw her actor stuff called, this girl is not. So she looked at me and then I delivered the lines and it stunned her. It stunned her. I say all this to say a lot of times you have actors that they are in their own element and it is to their detriment. That what makes you good, what makes you great is not you by yourself. It is you wanting something from somebody else. It is the tension. It is the drama. It's not, we are not in agreement. You and I are not in agreement. I don't care if you are my best friend. When we are on that stage, it is a battle. It is combat. I want
Yes.
something from you and you
Yes.
better give it to me or
Yes.
I'm going to try my best to get it. It's the same way. And when you're doing a solo piece, when you're doing a monologue, you are not by yourself.
That's
It is
right.
not you alone. You know, it is you and the audience. I've done a couple of solo shows, and what I learned was it is not solo. It is you and the audience. There is no one
Right?
person show. There is none of that. That's some BS. What
Yes.
is true is that the audience is my partner.
Yes.
If they
Yes.
are,
Yes.
I'm going to respond. If
Yes.
they go, "What?" I'm going to
Yes.
respond.
And that's the same thing with Marsha Mason. That's the reason why you held, because you're a
We are
partner.
together. And so
Yes.
as young artists, as young actors, not about you. I just want to put it out there because social media sometimes or YouTube or whatever their flavor is at the moment sometimes gives you bad information.
Yes.
And what is true is being present as an artist with the other artists in front of you. It is you being able to stand against them and bring your goods and serve them. It is not about how you look, it is not about how you sound, it is about what you are wanting to get from that other actor. They have to become important to you, that if they don't speak, you stop.
Yes. That's right. Because I'm going to add just one thing to serve the other actor, to serve your partner, your acting partner, but also to serve the story. That sounds like a given, but sometimes it's to serve the story, and it's to serve your story and their story, the story. But definitely it and when it happens, it's magical. It is so
Yes.
magical. I am on set with gracious actors, no matter how much of a star they are, because to your point, I'm only as good as the person is who is playing with me. So why wouldn't I be gracious? I I'm telling you, all of the actors that I have worked with, when the camera's not on you, you kind of, most people phone it in because the camera's not on me. I know actors who give just as much when the camera is turned, when the camera is no longer on them, it's on their scene. They're doing just as much when the camera's not on them so that they can give graciously to the actor for whom the camera is on.
I want to find out what you see, um the accomplished actor who has a career that is esteemed, what it is that they bring to the table that young artists can start taking in for themselves, to say, okay, I want to do this. You talked about work ethic. You give Mahershala talk about how he has an incredible work ethic, and we don't really pair the two, work ethic and actor. We pair actor bad behavior, actor asshole, actor bad boy or bad girl, but we don't um pair. That is not something that we pair. Is work ethic, is character. It is staying the course, right? Acting is a rigorous job because sometimes you have to do 10 takes. If you're working with David Finch, you may have to do 20 takes. And then he may say, wait, we got to do it again.
It's interesting because I think the hardworking actor with an impeccable work ethic and a sense of grace and generosity is the norm. It really is the norm. And it certainly is the norm for me. And I work with a lot of people for whom it is the norm as well. I just think that the you know, it's the squeaky wheel gets the oil. You know, the actor that is troubled has to have the media attention, of course, gets all of the media attention. And you then hear, how often do you see Mahershala and his wife, you know, in the media? They stay away. Or and I named certain people because the family is intact. The family component of of the artists that I work with is intact. And that doesn't have to be traditional husband wife. That can be extended family. That can be relationships with that they've worked on um, with their moms, with their parents, you know, uh, because we are conduits of human behavior, because we are impacts, and for seasons sometimes we have to take on as artists these characters who are very troubled because it makes for interesting drama. And and so we take on these characters who are troubled. I find the real seasoned actors are the ones who know how to keep trouble at bay. They stave it off in their lives by having um, real uh, substantial relationships with partners, with family, with their children. It was so beautiful to hear Giancarlo and Mahershala talk about their children. This cinematographer talk about his children in London. It's because we're on set for so many months of a year, and you need that stability in life because the mercurial element of the industry can really be troublesome. And so you need, and we all know that money and fame is not the answer. I'm finding that people who find their tribe and a sense of spirituality and a sense of family and an investment in their children, and they even have it clauses in their contracts. I know several people that will not be away for more than 2 weeks from their families. It's in their contract, and either you bring my family here or you schedule my filming days so that every 2 weeks I've got a Monday off or a Friday off so that I have a 3-day weekend to go home and be with my family. It's sort of baked in to a sense of groundedness that they then come and bring to a set, which is more the norm for me. Um, and so that goes with a rigor, that goes with having a process, because if all hell is breaking loose in your life, it's really difficult to show up in your fullness. And and so whatever tools you need, and we're talking about people who really mind what they put in their bodies.
Yes.
people who keep their instruments at peak level, but also their hearts and their spirits are tended to as well.
Well, they've also learned and not to bring it home with them, because that's an important thing, right? You're not taught that in acting classes. You're not taught how to put down that character. What we
Yes.
hear is, I lived the character for a year. I was the character. I never got out of character. And that is detrimental to your spirit, especially if you have to go to a very dark place.
Well, we've
um,
seen it. We've
yeah,
seen it. Yeah.
yeah. And so to learn how to,
Yes.
uh, a therapist that I interviewed said you have to de-roll the.
Yes.
You have to say, okay, honey, you stay here. I'll see you
I'll
tomorrow.
see you on
Do
Monday.
it again. Yeah, but you have to stay here. And I think that when we come from bad childhood where we didn't get heard, or there was a lot of drama, a lot of trauma, and we take it, and we haven't gotten the healing from it, that it continues to play out. Going back to what you were saying earlier, that a certain actor had created all this chaos in their work, but part of that is you are not taking care of yourself to say, I'm hurting, let me get healing here and understand what it was, so then I can recreate it on set but not bring it home with me. Let me take care of my body, let me stay away from liquor if I am prone to liquor, and
Yes.
it makes me a
Yes.
another person by
Yes.
consuming it, or getting high or whatever. It's like it is, how do you take care of yourself to show up on set and do the best work you can?
Yes. Yes. Indeed. And to go back to that particular person that I was referring to, I can remember um, at the end of our sessions praying for him. Praying for him because I knew, I don't even know if people knew, but I knew. I don't even if knew if he was unraveling, but I knew, and it was more a soul that needed help, you know. And see, this is interesting because the lifestyle, you work so hard for 14 hours a day, and you really have to be mindful of intentionality when it comes to healthy behavior healthy behavior and how that shows up in your everyday life, so that when you do get the part, you're already in lockstep with healthy life. And I don't mean going to the gym. I'm
Right.
not saying that that's how it looks. I'm talking about healthy toxic.
Having community, having a community that's supportive, being in a space where you are protected, going where you are celebrated and not tolerated, and how
Yes.
important that is. That if you've never had that, to
Yes.
start finding people who can emulate that for you, so
That's
you
right.
can get that. You don't have to have come from a solid family home to give that to yourself.
That's right. That's right. And and not only I want to talk about relationships with managers and agents. A lot of times those relationships can be very toxic, and you feel that you don't have the power in the relationship to express what you would like, what you need, because you are just grateful that they're representing you. And sometimes those relationships can be quite toxic. And I tell people all the time, I remind people all the time that they work for you, and that's the bottom line. And a lot of times, and even acting teachers that can be abusive, you know, because a lot of uh the old school paradigm of breaking you down to build you back up is malarkey. It is absolutely unnecessary. It's old school. It's out. Do not You do not have to be psychologically, verbally, or in any way abused by a director, an agent, an acting teacher, or anybody, because it really is, we're showing up. I remember one time I showed up on set and it was just toxic. And I said, you know what? We're making a movie. Come on. You're not finding the cure to cancer. You're making a movie. I don't know if I mentioned this in my book, but I was fired. The one time I was fired.
Yes. He said, that doesn't sound like New York to me. And you said, well, I'm from New York. I was like, yes, that's my sister. Yes.
Did. I did. He said, does that sound like a fucking New York accent to you? And I went in my new, I said, I'm from New York. And by the way, I'm old enough to be your mother. I'm old enough to be your fucking mother. Don't ever talk to me like that. It's like if you don't stand for something, you fall for anything.
That's right.
You don't have to take it. And so, yes, I was fired. And I was okay with it because I'm not going to let one person in Hollywood determine my success or let me think that they determine my success. I think the bottom line in this segment of the conversation is don't give your power over to anybody. And how to maintain and how to find your power is healthy, toxic free habits, healthy, toxic free people, healthy, toxic free places. And make a practice of it now when you don't have a lot so that it becomes a major practice when you do have a lot.
And ground yourself in spirituality, with you and God, and because churches can be toxic too, religious organizations can be toxic too. You have to start connecting with the source, whatever that means to you. To connect, it starts with your spirituality, and then from that everything flows. Because if you come to Hollywood and you want to be a star, they're going to take advantage every which way of Sunday. So you
Yes.
must have something that grounds you, that keeps you centered, it keeps you healthy and clear minded. Because
A
oh
meditation
man,
practice, a meditation yoga practice, whatever it is, it should be centered in relaxation and breathing.
hmm I first of all, I want to know what made you want to write this book, because this book is God uh, given, it's God ordained, and it's God anointed. Without being
Thank
a
you.
religious book, it's not religious,
Exactly.
people.
Yes. If you're not in that mindset, you won't find it there. Do you know what I mean? It's you see it there because we're in that mindset. But if you're not, then you won't find it there. I'm going to tell you, a friend of mine said to me years ago, a friend that went to Juilliard with me, she was in the dance division and she was there in the 70s. And we found each other again because she then lived in LA and we connected. And this was before Facebook or anything like that. And so all of us, and now that same group, we're all celebrating because our first year at Juilliard was 1975. And 50 years ago, this September we met, and so the four of us are getting together and celebrating the year 50 years ago that we met. But this one woman, young lady, says to me, Denise, you were such an amazing actress. You really were such an amazing actress. I think you need to get back into acting. And your personal story is so phenomenal. I think you should do a one woman show. And if you do it, I'll gather up my producer friends and produce it. And I said, okay. I remember where I was when she brought up the notion, and I said, I think I do need to act again. So I started writing. I started writing a one woman show, and it was so deep. It was so deep. I thought, there is no way I can do this every night in performance. I don't want to go here. Because I go to places of myself and of my story and of my journey that I thought, I don't want to go here every night in performance. I'll write a book. And I started writing a book, and I called one of my friends and said, um, I think I'm going to need a ghostwriter because I don't know how to write a book. I just wrote something and I don't know how to form it. And she was Common's assistant, personal assistant at the time, his manager. She managed his life, you know. So she was an assistant manager. She managed his life while he had managed
Mm-hmm.
his career, but she managed his basically his life. And we became really really good friends. And she gave me the number of a woman who I let sit in my phone for forever. And then in 27, was it the 2017 SAG Awards, where the Me Too movement, all the women wore black. Do you remember? All the
Yes.
women wore black. It was either the SAG Awards or the
The
Emmys,
the
the
golden
Golden Globes.
globes.
Okay. I never watch award shows. I never do. I watched this show. Don't know why. And Oprah spoke, and she said, there's someone out there who has a story that needs to be told. I know there's a woman sitting out there, and I'm crying. I'm crying, 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 looking for this ghostwriter's number or phone number or email address. Couldn't find it, couldn't find it, couldn't find it. Text my friend. It's Sunday night. She's out and about. Finally, I find it, and I emailed the ghostwriter, and the ghostwriter hits me back. And she says, and that's so unusual. We're talking, it's Sunday night. I mean, I literally had to find this woman after Oprah is speaking. I'm crying, emailing her about, I have a story that needs to be told, and I just have to get it out. I just have to do it. And so she got back to me, and she says, "Do you mind if this sounds wonderful?" She said, "Do you mind if I give it to my agent?" I said, "No, please." She said, "I'll give it to my agent tomorrow, Monday." She gives it to her agent. Her agent emails me on Tuesday and says, "Oh my goodness, I was at a cocktail party a couple of months ago, and a colleague of mine is looking for a book just like this."
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
so serious. She said, "Do you mind if I give it to him?" I said, "Please." And so she gives it to him, and he calls, because I had all I had was the what was now the like the overview.
Yes.
That's all I had written was an overview. I had no chapters or anything. And he emails me and said, "I've been looking for this book for 10 years."
Mm.
I kid you not. And so he says, "I want to represent you, but I am in the middle of leaving my agency and starting my own agency. Now, because you came to me while I'm still at this agency, I'm going to give you the option. You can go with them because they're a big agency and the literary department of a major agency." He said, "You can go with them or you can come with me." And I said, "I'll wait." It took him a long time to develop the agency, to develop his agency. And I waited. I waited. And in the and while I was waiting, I'm going to tell you how everything aligns. While I was waiting, I decided to go ahead and do a book proposal. To write a book proposal with the ghostwriter that I had initially reached out to. And so we get to writing this book proposal. And and it's just this wonderful robust book proposal. And we're in lockstep with each other. And I thought, and she's not an African American woman, she's a white woman. And I thought, she's great because I already have the African American voice. I need to hear her voice. I need to hear. I need to. It was an amazing collaboration. We became sisters. We're really good friends to this day, and I'm in the midst of writing my second book, and
Yeah.
I'm in the midst of writing my second book, and I reached out to her, and she read what I was writing. She said, Denise, you don't need me. You're, she said, no, really, you can do this. I said, are you sure? She said, you don't need me, sis. You're good. I said, okay, thank you. But then we write this proposal. He sets up his agency, and we start shopping for a deal. And I'm just going to say this because I want it to bless people. I'm not bragging in any way. He comes back to me, and by this time, I'm no longer on the show with Mahershala. I'm doing Harriet with Cynthia Erivo, and I'm in my trailer. And he says, Denise, are you sitting down? I said, yeah. He said, we've got 3 offers on deck. I started screaming, and everybody came to my trailer. Denise, are you okay? I was like, yes, I'm great. I'm great. Yes. I kid you not. I kid. There's a theme as I talk about this. There's a theme of of that intuition, that internal thing that I never watched award shows. It was watching Oprah that made me call the ghostwriter. And the ghostwriter who gave it to her agent said, oh, I have a friend. I was at a cocktail party and he's looking for this book, and he looked for the book, and I mean, boom, 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 boom. Divine orchestration.
Well, we are aligned with the spirit, everything falls in alignment. That is amazing.
Isn't that an amazing story? Isn't that an amazing story?
Yes, it is. And I think that for actors, this book is a must. This is a must. Um, it is not only you telling your story, walking us through exercises. And I must tell you how much I love the audio version.
Oh,
I
thank
love
you.
the audio because I have dyslexia. And so when I am reading, I like to hear at, at
Yes.
the same time because it helps keep me grounded in it.
Yes.
It's like
I
I
get
can
it.
stay focused. um
Yes.
but what I love so much, first of all, your voice is amazing. You have such a calmness to you as you are walking us through the chapters, the exercises, the stories, that it is
Thank
so
you.
enjoyable to listen. I started this conversation with, a lot of times actors don't like to listen to their voices.
Mm-hmm.
They have a distaste for, I hate how I sound.
I have to say, it's not just actors. Most people do.
Yeah, and so to hear it, and I am a big audiobook person anyway,
Oh,
but
great.
it was such a breath of fresh air. And I love when people who've written it uh say their own story. I hate to hear somebody else say the story of somebody else who wrote it. That's just my preference. But I loved it because were soothing me as I was listening and as I was reading. And it made me excited to go, I want to study with Denise. I need this. And so I just want to share with you that this is a gift for the actor, and it really is a gift for actors of color. No matter what color you are, this is really for you. I haven't been this excited about an acting book since Ivana Chubbuck. I'm
Wow.
always talking about Ivana's book because that book is transformational, and this is right there with it.
Thank
And
you. Thank
I wouldn't
you.
bother Ivana about, well, when's the audio coming out? When's the audio coming out? So she recently released the audio, and I went to a book site. I said, "Thank you." It is about time. Thank you. I am so grateful. I have the audio now. I will do it again. I will listen and I will read it again.
You have no idea how touching your words are because they're very succinct. What my goal was with this audiobook, because it's an anthology of not just my story, but stories of clients, stories of people for whom trauma was present in their lives, real personal stories that relate to their voices and how they were able to find their voices through challenging circumstances, be it a CEO of color who was in the midst of institutional racism and microaggressions being leveled at him left and right. And so his story is in the book. And what my objective was as an actor, because now I'm a narrator, I'm not the writer. I put the actress's hat on, the voice actor's hat on, and said, I need to be aware of carrying the audience, the listener. I need to be aware of making sure that I've got them, that they know I've got them vocally, because I'm going to talk about some pretty serious stuff here. And sometimes I'm going to talk about some real dense clinical technical stuff. And so I want them to feel comfortable no matter where they come in how they approach the work.
And that is why I love the bonus that you give us at the end, because I feel like I am going through a Juilliard class
That's right.
that
That's what I wanted.
even though I didn't get to go to Juilliard, which I wanted to. I'll tell you this real quickly. When I
Please.
was reading your story, I was like, "Oh my God, she lived the life I wanted." As growing up in Spanish Harlem, I went to Catholic school because that was the law that you had to go to Catholic school. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
I knew I wanted to be an actor since I was 5 years old, and saw a Christmas pageant at our school, and so, but I didn't know anybody who could help me get there. But I was always putting shows on by myself. I was forcing kids in the neighborhood to give me a nickel because I was doing a show for them. I made them sit so I could do the show. And then in eighth grade, when we were getting ready to go into high school, I heard about the High School of Performing Arts. I was like, that's where I want to go. I submitted for an application, got the application, and they wanted a monologue. I didn't know what a monologue was, had no clue. What is a monologue? So we had a very hip brother in the school, Brother D. And I went up to Brother D. I said, Brother D, I want to go to the High School of Performing Arts. They say I need a monologue. What is a monologue? This teacher took me to the library down 10 Street between Lenox and 3rd and
Wow.
sat with me we didn't get out of there till dark. We went through a bunch of plays and monologues till we found a monologue that he said, I think you could do this. And taught me how to, and he was not in the arts. He was a brother. He was a Catholic brother teaching 7th grade. I prepared, and then when I got to the audition, I panicked and I didn't do the monologue I had prepared. I made up a whole monologue while I was there. I didn't get in. I was devastated. And then I'm going to Brandeis High School. My junior year, I was in a program called College Bound,
Oh
and
yeah.
you have 2 math classes, 2 English reading classes. Part of the perks you got was you could submit to every school you wanted to submit to, and they paid for the applications.
Oh
So I
my.
submitted to about 40 schools, but the school I wanted to go to was Juilliard. He sent the applications to all the other schools, but he never sent my application to Juilliard. And I would come in every other day and say, did they respond? Did they say no, they didn't respond. They didn't respond. And I didn't find out till the end that he did not send it because he did not think I would get in. And so So as I'm reading your story, I'm living through you. I'm like, she went to Juilliard. And I know that it was hard and I know that there were stuff, but that for to be able to come from the communities that we come from, to be able to go to those schools, to me is a testament to who you are. That your mother raised you in such a way and put so much
Right.
effort into you that you
Yes.
were able to, she made a way for you where there was none.
That's right.
She made a way for you, know that the Bible talks about he makes a way for you where there is none. She did that for
Yeah.
you. And I just love, I am in such awe
Thank
of,
you.
first of all, a single mom being able to take her daughter and say, look, we may live in the ghetto, but we are not of the ghetto.
That's right.
And then take you and your sister and put you in all these art classes and theater things, and to have the mindset to say, yes, I am going to let my daughter audition for the New York Children's Opera Company. That to me says so much about your mother and her commitment to make sure that she nurtured your gifts, you and your
Yes.
sister. and
Yes.
and the
Thank
fact
you.
that so many kids don't have that opportunity, don't get that opportunity where their parents are so supportive to say, baby, what do you want? let's
Yeah.
let's move you in there, let's get you in there.
Yeah.
That, and as a mother, that has always been a big thing for me, to make
I
sure that
know.
I guided my daughter. It's like
I know.
my only thing for her was always, I'm putting you in this. If you don't like it, it's okay, but you're going to finish it. And then when you finish, you can know that, because that was not afforded to me. Nobody cared if I did the class or if I completed the, nobody, I didn't have that kind of support. And I think,
Hmm.
as you know, when you have um children, whether they're yours or they're in your care, to really support and nurture them and push them
Yeah.
and say, you may not want to stay here, and I'm okay with that, but I need you to finish the course so you know what it is, because there is power in having finished stuff. And as people of color, we don't always get that opportunity. Something goes wrong and then we're out of there, or something goes wrong and we're kicked out of there, or I mean, there are all these variations, but we don't complete the task. And I think it is important to hear, first of all, to hear your story, and to hear those stories that you have put out in your podcast, the voices on the yard, to hear these black artists talking about, some didn't complete, they left at the end of 2 years, and some completed, and hearing the ones who didn't complete say, I wish I had stayed.
That's right.
And I believe, and this is my assumption, and I could be wrong, but I believe
Hmm.
that if they had had your mother saying to them, I don't care if you don't like it, you're going to finish this, you're going to stay here and finish it, that it would have been to their advantage. And so I just want to throw that out, because
Thank
as someone
you.
who didn't have that, I, I,
Thank
I was
you.
blessed in other ways, and I
Yeah.
am grateful for what I had, because at 13, I found my way to a radio station, WBLS,
I
and I
know.
found a
I
family.
know.
I
And you
got a
found your
family.
tribe.
That's right. They supported me. They would go to school when I did, when I got in trouble,
Yes.
because I got in trouble a lot. And my mother was like, I'm not going to school. And so I would have to have somebody from the station go to school and act like my guardian, to say, well, what's the problem? And when I did my last year of high school, I flourished, because I started participating in the acting stuff. And it was my radio family that came to my opening, that came and
Oh,
cheered me on and supported me. And so, as you are talking in your book, again, everybody, um, to read how you were supported from your mother, how you were given um, that nurturing to say, go, do, be, thrive, spread your wings. And that even though it was difficult at Juilliard, even though you didn't get the roles, even though you had this great gift, this great ability to perform, not just to sing, but to act, that God used all of that stuff for you to be able to craft your ministry, to grow you in a place that you could now teach, nurture, and help others thrive. What a beautiful gift. So I want to say that to you,
Truly.
to say,
Thank you.
first of all, you are an extraordinary woman in that you have answered the call and have been gracious to uh to be willing. The Bible says if you're willing and obedient, you get to eat the good of the land. And that even though your journey kind of had all these twists and turns, and traumas and disappointments and betrayals, that God has made it up and say, okay, baby, I'm a give you this, and this is going to be part of your legacy, that will live on beyond you. Because I think this is timeless. I think this book there are books that come. It's like Shakespeare, right? Shakespeare has withstood the test of time, and I think this book does that. I think your audio does that. So that's my rant.
You're absolutely right. Thank you. That's what the publishing company said when the book was done. I had lunch with the actual publisher of this major, major company. And she said, we're looking at your book. The longevity, the lifespan of your book is going to be timeless. Uh, and she was right, because my book was published during COVID. And so there wasn't a book tour. There were virtual book tours. I didn't do, there wasn't a book signing. A lot of the bells and whistles that come with a launch of a book that they've invested this amount of money in did not happen because of COVID. And they said, trust me, over the period of time, this book will gain momentum. And they were absolutely right, because January of 2025, was the biggest sales. The month of January was the biggest. In 2025, we're talking, it was launched in January of 2021. 4 years later was the most sales that we had gotten to date.
I want to see this book in a lot of different languages. And again, I will reference Ivana's book. It is in 28 languages. And I think that this book should also be in 28 different languages. And because of it,
Thank
she's been
you.
able to go to more than 28 countries and give master classes. And so I see
Exactly.
this as the same thing.
Well, I actually got a client from the country Brunei. Brunei. She reaches out to me on WhatsApp and she says, I was in a library and I live in Brunei. I found your book on a shelf. I looked up and saw your book on a shelf and thought, I have to read it. And once I started reading it, I have to work with you. So it's out there on shelves. I mean, the distribution,
Yes.
but like you said, you can translate it into different
Yes.
languages. That's
Yes, and I would say it might be time for you to reach out to the publishing company and say, "What do you think about? Um, let's start it in Spanish and take it French and Italian. Let's
Mhm.
start." I think that's a good conversation to have. And
Thank
so
you. I
I I
receive it.
I think this is important because we don't talk about. I wanted to make this a master class on the breath and some of your things, but for some reason, I think this is something we don't see. It gets done, but you don't hear people talking about it. So hopefully, this will help somebody who you need to do your book, like Oprah said. They're waiting for you to do your book. And so hopefully this will inspire and motivate them to get their book from the back of their closet or the back of their dresser drawer, pull it out and finish the
Right.
project.
That's
Finish the
right.
project.
Finish the project because my second iteration is a memoir. It's a full on memoir.
Well, we will be at the book signing when it comes out. We
Thank
will be there.
you.
No matter what the pandemic is, we'll be there. We will make it happen. That's something which I loved, and I wish I had you when I was first coming to Los Angeles, because um, for many people of color and people from the South, I would assume, but people of color, when we come to Hollywood, I know that to be a fact. When I first came out here, they sent me to a dialect coach, but it wasn't to pull out the best of me. It was to diminish um, my personality of sorts. It's like, oh, you got a New York accent. We got to get rid of that. And it didn't, it didn't really have the intention it wanted. I mean, I tried, but it wasn't effective. Like, I guess in my head, I thought it would be. It also made me feel very self-conscious for a long time, because it's like, oh my God, are they judging me based on my accent? Are they doing this? And I noticed that with fellow actors who were white, they didn't really get that kind of scrutiny. That it was just a given. They could be the Valley Girl and it was okay. They could be the Southern Belle and it was okay. It was actually charming. But when people of color come into the room, it's you sound ghetto. And so I'm just saying. So I am grateful to you. And if you have anything you want to add to that, I would love to hear it.
I would love to share it because then the PC term became urban. I can remember. Uh, my coming of age was in the '70s, and they could care less about being PC, and could you be less black? Uh, and it was a bone of contention for me. It really, really was. My New Yorkness, my New York sensibility, as much as the fact that my parents came from the South, that encompasses a large part of who I am. And then you throw in that I'm a woman of faith. I'm a mother. I am urbane. I'm well traveled. I'm all of these things holistically. And then someone comes and says, you've got to check this at the door. And basically, the verbiage around that, in my opinion, in my expert opinion, not humble opinion, but my expert opinion, is that there is racist overtones attached to that, because it's really basically saying racist, classist, elitist overtones attached to that, because it's saying we are better. What this is better than what you have. And I made a pact with myself that when I got into this space teaching, I would never, ever, ever in any way demean whatever dialect, cultural specificity, cultural identity that a person has. I would never minimize it in any way. And it's all a matter of how you phrase, how you shape, how you form the context in which you want people to affect change. I embrace change when it's brought to me in a way that shows me how I can grow, how I can morph into different characters with relative ease, how I can become more facile, how I can become more marketable if I have more tools in my kit, more voices in my kit. But if you come to me, if you approach me from the gate with the notion that what I have is inferior, then immediately I turn off. And that's immediately what happens when an actor is sent to me. But first of all, if they're an actor of color and I open up my office door and they haven't Googled me, a smile comes on their faces because they're like, oh, okay. Woo, yes.
Yes,
And
yes.
when I got into this coaching, dialect coaching in movies, there were just a handful of black people. Actually, at my level, it was just me and another black man at this level. And I can remember going on movie sets early in the early 90s and people seeing me show up and they go, oh my God, thank God you're here. We are just so glad because there are just not just the sounds of our dialects, but there's cultural specificity that you know, that I know, that a girl who grew up in middle America, a white girl who grew up in middle America may not know. And there's no way you can Google that. There's just this wonderful kind of synergy that we get, a knowing in the rhythm. I say the way we speak is not just the sounds of speech, it's the rhythm. It's a rhythmic thing. And I lean into that. I celebrate it and make sure that when I work with people, any type of community that in any way is marginalized, I celebrate them from the gate and make them feel secure in knowing that I am not trying to change you, the basis, the aesthetic, the basis of who you are. I'm just giving you tools to add so that you can pick and choose because the way I speak in every situation changes depending on the situation. And it doesn't make me any less of Denise. These are all facets of Denise because I am multifaceted. I chose this blouse today because I have a bevy of blouses, of silk blouses that I absolutely love because it's one of my things. A really nice silk blouse makes me feel good. And so I chose to put this on. It wasn't arbitrary. I think in that way, the same way that we show up in spaces, we have that choice. And it doesn't mean I'm trying to sound this way and I'm trying to be this way and I'm trying to do that and I'm trying to do that and trying to do that. It's just I want to flow with what I organically feel serves the environment, the situation. Yeah. And I'm okay with it. I'm really okay with it. I am so comfortable in my shoes.
So recently, Viola Davis came out and she said, going to Juilliard, they taught her how to be a white actress. So you, the first black woman to attend the drama school of Juilliard.
No, I wasn't
I,
the first Black woman to
oh,
attend.
okay,
However, I
okay,
was the first Black woman on faculty in the drama division. I was the first Black woman on faculty. I was in the eighth graduating class. I was in the first generation of Black women
okay. So actually,
who
I
attended.
misspoke because Paula Kelly came before you.
Paula Kelly was in the dance division, but I'm going to tell you the ladies that came before me. Um, the original uh, Aunt Viv on The Fresh Prince of Bel Air, and the Bernadette Stanis, who was in
Thelma in Good
Thelma
Times.
in Good Times.
Yes.
These were, and there were so many more that didn't go on into film and television, but had wonderful theatrical careers. There were a good 10 Black women, because I was in the eighth graduating class of Juilliard. There were seven classes that came before me. And in these seven classes, there were some dynamite women, female Black actresses.
What is your take on what Viola said, that she was groomed to be a white actress and not be who she was? I mean, in essence, that's what she's saying. You taught me how to be this, but you did not teach me how to be me.
I am not going to quote her because I don't want to misquote her because it's such a controversial subject that I am so grateful and I welcome this conversation. But I'm not going to quote her because for fear that I will misquote her. But I will say.
I misquoted her, but we love you, Viola. I know I misquoted you, but we love you.
Well,
Go
we know
ahead.
the essence of what she said,
Yes,
and
yes.
I completely concur, is that we were not given access to the tools of the organic tools of tapping into the rich cultural specificity of what we knew to be true based on who we were. We were not, I did not play a black role, specifically a black role, the entire time I was at Juilliard. Never did I play a role that the playwright was African American and the characters were African American. And yes, did I have a problem with it at the time? Of course I did have a problem with that. I had a problem with that. And so clearly I am in total and complete agreement with what she said, because when I got out of school, I auditioned for the Negro Ensemble Company thinking I've gone to Juilliard. I will never forget it. It was the first year I was out of Juilliard and started auditioning for Black companies because that's where the work was. Nobody was banging down the door for me, to come and do daytime television, prime time television. Film roles were really, really scarce and sparse. And so you go to Black theater. I will never forget the artistic director of the Negro Ensemble Company said, "Whoa, I think you need to come back in a year. You need to get some of that Juilliard out of you."
Mm, mm.
And I sat there and he said, "I don't mean to be rude." He said, "But sis, you can't gang." And gang back in the 70s was a combination of hanging and getting down. Like you said, you can't gang, you can't get down. You can't, they've taken it all out of you. And so because my phone was ringing off the hook when people were seeing what Viola said. And it was wonderful. I said, "Absolutely. Do you agree?" I said, "Absolutely. Absolutely." But I have a story that that is so palpable and rich and germane to this subject. When I was in my second year, and the second year is when we do Shakespeare, and we had a wonderful teacher our second year who came from the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. Actually, she came from the RSC, the Royal Shakespeare Company. And it was her first year at Juilliard teaching. She was British, teaching these American students, but she was incredibly wonderful and affable and approachable. And I went to her and said, "I can't relate to these Shakespearean characters. I'm having problems relating to this. And I don't feel that I'm going deeply into my emotional well because I just can't relate." And yes, I've done research and I'm going into research. And this is what this woman said to me. And she said, "Denise, do you realize that there were Africans in Europe during this period?" And I was right out of high school. So I was 18 years old. In my second year, I was 19 years old. And I said, "I'm sure it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I've never read anything about any of the African presence in Europe in the 17th and 18th centuries." She said, "You must. The presence is huge." And of course, I did not find a thing in the Juilliard Library. I didn't find a thing in the Performing Arts Library at Lincoln Center. I went up to Harlem, baby. I went up to Harlem to the Schomburg Library, and that was the first time I realized the African presence in Europe. And I'm talking about the African presence, not the enslaved African presence, but I'm talking about the African presence of royalty. And and it really helped me connect. It made that one teacher who said, but clearly, if I hadn't asked, if I hadn't wanted more. See, that's the wonderful thing about this generation, is that we are banging down doors because we just know that the existing narrative is not all there is, and it's cloaked in systemic racism. And we want to get to the bottom of it. We want to get to the bottom of our existence as as black people on this planet who were taken in chains. And then that became our narrative, and all of the narratives around trauma. And now we want to find the celebration of our legacy. The trauma is real, but we want to find the stories of triumph. We want to find ourselves in every aspect of it, because as we see right now, erasure of our existence throughout history is on a rise. And so my ability to go to that teacher and say I am not connecting, and for her to say, well, I have a way for you to connect. And if I had just stopped at the libraries that were in my area and said there's nothing here, because there literally was nothing there, nothing, but there was at the Schomburg. And I say, knock the doors down, ask the questions, make the statements as Viola made, because it lit up the internet. And I'm so glad that in some way I was a part of it, because 2 years ago I launched a podcast.
It's a fantastic podcast.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you. It is called Our Voices on the Yard. And that's what we called Juilliard back in the day, the yard. We called it the yard. And I'm almost certain that it started with the black students. But then it became, the moniker, the yard. And so the reason why it was Our Voices on the Yard as opposed to Our Juilliard, which was the initial title for the show, was because Juilliard did not want me to use their name, because I went. I didn't want to be sued. I knew that we were going to talk about controversial issues, because it was Our Juilliard, the African American experience. And
Mm.
then when I went, and I didn't go to the drama division, I went to the Juilliard school, the powers that be at Juilliard. And I went to different departments, and it kind of ended up with them sort of saying, we will endorse it if you say this. I'm serious. And I said, well, I won't use your name, because I am not going to guarantee that I'm not going to say what the entire story of our experience was at Juilliard. I'm not going to edit my guests. I am going to talk about it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And quite frankly, I'm going to tell you, we are celebrating Juilliard in such a huge way. It's a travesty that they didn't want to put their name on it, because for the most part, we are singing the praises of the rigor and the quality of education and what we were exposed to. And yes, there was pain. Yes, there was elitism. Yes, there was racism. I mean, blatant racism. And to hear these stories, but through it all, because as you will see, my question to everybody, if you had it to do over again, would you do it? And to the person, everybody says, I'd do it again. And so that's a true testament to our fortitude, to what we acquired. I can remember telling my mother one time that I was thinking of leaving Juilliard because I was not getting cast in roles. That when I returned as a faculty member, one of my teachers, who was now the second person in charge of the drama division in the 90s, brought me into his office and he said, Denise, I want you to know that we didn't do right by you in
Mm.
terms of casting when you were a student. And
Mm.
I said, I know. And he said, I said, but it feels good that you're telling me this. He said, by the time we had work for you, we were taking shows on tour, and we were touring in places like Palm Beach, Florida, Bermuda, and we had money people, we had donors, and we just we just didn't feel that that was the look that we wanted our donors to see. And I'm very sorry. I'm very, very sorry about that. And it didn't it didn't make me feel any better, because when I got to Juilliard in the 90s, I realized that really not much had changed. Not much had changed. And that's what Viola was talking about, because Viola was in her fourth year. My first year teaching at Juilliard, Viola was in her fourth year. And of
Mm.
course, I didn't teach the upperclassmen because I'm a new faculty member. But I can remember word had gotten around the school, not just the drama division, the school, that a new Black teacher was on faculty in the drama division. And Black kids came from all over the building to introduce themselves to me. And annually, what I would do is I would take these wonderful Black students, I'd take them to my aunt's restaurant in Harlem, Sylvia's restaurant. Sylvia's
Sylvia's,
restaurant.
the one and only Sylvia's. Yes. Good chicken,
Good
good collard
chicken and
greens.
waffles and
That's
collard
right.
greens. And a
That's
lot of
right.
these kids were from the South, particularly the singers, because they were from the Black church. And see, that's the thing. How can you not celebrate this? That is such a crucial part of our history. The Black church, our food, our rhythms, the way in which we dance, the way we speak, our sayings, our sayings that harken back to West Africa.
I think there's an embarrassment uh regarding white people. There's a sense of not wanting to tell the truth, because if you look at the history of Black people coming to the United States or being dragged to the United States, a lot of the culture that we see now is because of Black people, and white people don't want to acknowledge it. Like rice, it was Black people that brought rice to the South. It was Black people that grew it. It was Black people that created the menus, the food items to eat. It was actually a Black family that started catering out of Philadelphia in the
Yes,
1800s.
I know the family you're talking about.
It
Yes,
is that all the history, I mean, when you think of Jefferson, of Thomas Jefferson, and him taking his slave to Paris to teach him culinary skills, who came back and taught us, and because of him we have mac and cheese. That when his slave wanted his freedom, who happened to be the brother of the woman that Jefferson impregnated, not once, not twice, not three times, but six times. Six times. She was the half sister of his wife, because his father-in-law impregnated her mother, who was a slave.
yes,
And because of Black people, the richness, the history, and we could say the same thing for Mexicans, and we could say the same thing
yes.
for all these people who came to
Native
this nation, the
Americans.
Native Americans who have been stripped of their culture, of their worth, who were a peaceful people, who embraced the white people when they came off the ships, trying to flee from religious persecution. And what did they get? They got betrayed, they were killed, they were just obliterated from this nation for the most part. A lot of them. The only tribe, well, one of the only tribes that we know that did not allow that were the Seminole Indians in Florida. But for the most part, every other tribe was just devastated by whites coming into this country. Um, I can go. This is, girl. You just opened up
Oh
my
yeah.
top. My you just
You
opened
know,
up. I wasn't trying to go here now.
but it's time to talk about it. It's time, it really is time to talk about it, because what I want to do is have conversations that elicit a sense of healing, a sense of coming to terms with our past, And the reason why I bring this up, because when I got to Juilliard in 92, I taught at Juilliard from 92 to 2000. And I'm telling you, those were the golden years. I know that they have some amazing kids coming out in the 2000s. By the time 2000, I went to head the speech department at Cal Arts, and that was a real pivotal change for me, because Cal Arts being an experimental school, it gave voice to marginalized, non-traditional ways of thinking.
It also championed a lot of young people of color. It
Oh my
really was
gosh,
very dominant in championing them. Getting kids
absolutely.
from the poor sections, and because they brought it here to Los Angeles, where they were teaching high school students, giving them opportunities. So
Absolutely. And they had a robust trans community at Cal Arts in the early 25 years ago. And just open thinking. And so when I went to Cal Arts to interview for the position, I thought Juilliard in the 90s is stuck in the 70s. They were doing the same productions that I had done in the 70s. It was the same faculty, my teachers were now my colleagues 20 years later. They were doing the same productions in the same way with the same aesthetic.
what were you able to bring as a faculty member at that period that opened it up a little bit? Because I'm sure your being there, your presence changed not just you taking the kids to Sylvia's, but
That's
that
right.
it made a profound difference, because now they had somebody who could give them truth that they didn't have before.
Absolutely. Well, I'm gonna start by saying I gave them my experience at Juilliard. That was a gift that I had gone through the program. It wasn't that they were hiring a Black woman to come in and teach. I'd gone through the program and I knew what they were talking about. I knew. I'm telling you, students, white and Black, would come to me and say, Denise, they're fucking with me. And I knew, because they were my teachers, I knew. And what I did, I was able to ban a group of faculty members, and we were the younger faculty members, to, in faculty meetings, to think about artists in a different light, to look at the artists that young artists that we took in a different way. That's where I felt my real power was held. I mean, I could talk to students. I could form community. I could give students ideas, because I gave students ideas. I said, you know what? If they're not casting you, do something yourself. There was a sister that just came, and she got all the Black women together in all of the divisions. And every year she did phenomenally Black women. And it was a showcase for the Black women, for Black female talent at Juilliard in the 90s. And so we had the singers, we had the dancers, it was just beautiful. And it was an idea that I said, listen, if you're not getting what you want, create it, make it happen. And I said, and then invite all the people in New York that you want to come. You're at Juilliard. Use what they have. Use their mailing list. Use the people that they know to come hear all of you perform. And so I was able to galvanize power and strength that way. But I was also very useful in faculty meetings. I have to say this, because there was a way of looking at a Juilliard student that, in a lot of ways, was very myopic. And I'm just going to give you an example of the new guard versus the old guard. And this was in the music division, not the drama division. I was invited by a wonderful music division teacher, because, again, we were the young generation and we kind of all knew each other, because when you get a position at Juilliard, you don't leave. So to be able to be invited onto faculty at Juilliard when you're in your 30s is a huge deal because these faculty members don't leave. And so we all knew each other, all of the faculty, dance division, faculty, music division. So this young teacher comes to me and says, Denise, I am starting a think tank so that we can talk about adding a jazz division to the Juilliard School. Now, mind you, by the time I came back years later, I would say after I left, and I can't remember the year the jazz division was started, but I was in the very beginning of the thought of the machinations of there being a jazz division, and I was the only Black person in the room. And I do believe that Wynton Marsalis was supposed to be in the room as well, but he was at the height of his career and he was traveling. But he was part of that think tank, and myself. And I will never forget a retired faculty member of the music division. And this is how come I only quote things that I know as opposed to like quoting what I thought, but I know I was in the room. This retired musician faculty was there, and he said, he introduced himself, he introduced his name, and he was the class of 1935. I was class of 1979. He was class of 1935, the year my mother was born. That's the year he graduated from Juilliard. And he said, Juilliard is an ivory tower. And to bring this genre of music would be reducing the level of its pedagogy. And I sat there and just thought, what can I do? How, it's going to take years for this to die out, for new thought, new ideology, new ways of thinking to come in. And it took a while, but eventually they got to have a robust jazz division. But by that time I had gone because, like I said, it was the 90s. And the African American students that they were taking in had changed culturally because of hip hop.
Mm,
Okay?
mm,
Because
mm.
of hip hop. And I embraced hip hop because I knew that it came from spoken word. The spoken word of the last poets and Gil Scott Heron of the 70s, of my generation. I knew that this was just the next step where it was going. And so I can remember a lot of the Black male students, particularly the Black men, kept coming to me and saying, I feel like they don't want me to speak the way I speak. I feel that I am being pigeonholed and singled out because of the way I speak. And this is what I told them, which is what my mother told me when I was in my third year at Juilliard, because I started this conversation with that. I wanted to leave Juilliard because I wasn't being cast. And my mother said to me, Nisi, take the meat and throw away the bones. And I wanted to say, take the meat and throw away the bones. But in addition to this, you fight. You're not leaving. You're not leaving, but you make your voices heard. You make your thoughts known. And I did say it. And I also said, and I will advocate for you in faculty meetings. You advocate for yourselves down here, boots on the ground, and I will advocate for you upstairs on the fourth floor. And by the time CalArts came to me and made me an offer that I could not refuse, because they knew.
Well, they wanted to celebrate you, right?
They knew that I was an asset.
Being tolerated to celebrate it. And I think we people of color have to know, there's a time to go where you are tolerated so you can plant seed, water it, let it grow, and get the hell out. And then there's a time for you to go where you are celebrated.
That's right.
It's You're talking about taking the meat and leaving the bones, but we're not taught that all the time. We are taught either to roll over, to just do what is told and be quiet, especially women of our generation. That was you don't count, you don't matter, you're just a second class citizen, which is what they're trying to do today. And young people have to, as you put it in the end of your book, The Power of Voice. This is a phenomenal book. But you say at the end of this book, and I wrote it down, you talk about prepare, show up, and fight like hell. And
Yes.
I it was just a little moment that you, but it woke. I was like, what? Wait, what? And I think that is where we are today as artists, to be prepared, show up prepared, show up and fight for what it is that you want. Don't let anybody tell you you cannot be there, you cannot have this, you cannot say this, because the way that they cannot erase us, the way they cannot diminish us, is if we keep coming. We keep coming. It's like it doesn't matter
Absolutely.
what you say, we're coming. You are not going to put the genie back in the bottle. That's
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 right.
that's over. That's
That's
over.
right.
No matter what you want to do, old man, that is over. Go
Those
back
days
to
are long gone.
1935, because that is over. And so,
Yes.
as artists, and not, this is not to bash white people, because I love all people, and the truth is that there is no color. um we're all God's children. God
Yes.
didn't say they're my children but you are not. No, we are all his children. We've
Absolutely.
all been created in his image, in
Yes.
his image. And the truth is that his image may be browner than what you think. And so, because we were created in his image, and if it started in Africa, hello, I'm just saying, the image started in Africa. It didn't start in Greenland. It didn't start in the North Pole. It started in Africa. And
Yes.
they keep trying to diminish Africa. They keep trying to strip Africa.
This is wonderful. This is absolutely wonderful. I just want to add that when I was on faculty at Juilliard, as opposed to, in addition to CalArts, in the 90s, from 92 to 2000, I have to tell you, I had the privilege of teaching some of the most woke students, white and black. It gave me so much hope. I'm telling you, white and black. It was it was so palpable, because when an infraction was done to a student of color, the entire company stood together and would not tolerate it. It was the a real firm example of what community looks like. And when I talk about communities and allies of a community, of standing together, strength in numbers, because that's where we start. We start with our tribe. We start with community. We start within the community, because what I said after November 2nd of last year, when we were all just in shock, I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in my community where my voice can be heard, and let it ripple, let the ripple effect of that energy, because I believe in energy. I believe in operating at our higher selves. Harken back to the students I taught at Juilliard, black and white, in the 90s, that were amazing, socially aware and socially woke. I mean, from all over the country. And believe it or not, the white Southern students were the most vocal,
Mm,
were the
mm,
ones that said we don't have to continue the generational curse. I mean, they were in lockstep with the black students,
mhm.
the white students from the South. And I haven't shared that I have a good 5 or 6 students who were from the South and were just adamant about representation, fairness, equity, inclusion before it became buzzwords. And so,
Or weapons used to diminish us.
and how can you use inclusion to diminish? But all that aside, I like to give a roadmap when people say, well, where do I start? What do I do? We can talk about this, ad nauseum, but where do I start? You start right here, having a conversation, just the two of us. We start with amplifying what Viola said. What Viola said, her reality, because I can't. One of my dear friends, I went to Juilliard. She went to the state. She went to Purchase, the other drama school in the '70s. That was, and she said, "Was this your reality in the '70s?" I said, "Absolutely." She said, "It was mine too." And she's my friend from high school, and we had never talked about it.
And you went to the High School of Performing
I
Arts,
went to
so
the
it's
High School of
important
Performing.
to throw that in the
Yes,
mix.
that
Yes.
fame was based on. I went to the High School of Performing Arts. And so it's in my blood, it's in my DNA. I sang with the New York City Opera when I was 14 years old. So it's in my blood. And so when I get to a place like Juilliard, how dare they want to erase all of me? How dare they want to erase any part of me? I grew up in the Black church in Harlem. My family owns a Harlem institution restaurant. But I also sang with the New York City Opera. We are multifaceted. And that's what we wanted to get the faculty, when I was on faculty, to see that just because they don't fit into this peg that you see, what about the other aspects of the artist? And when I got to Cal Arts, that's what I saw. I saw them celebrating the queerness. I saw them celebrating the marginalized person. Yeah, it was night and day.
Let's sit in inclusion for a second,
Yes.
because you and I come from a revolutionary generation. We come from the 60s, where revolution was happening in this country. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, you had all this stuff, the civil rights, you had all this upheaval for justice, for equality, not for colorism, but for equality for all people. Martin Luther King died for all people. He said all people. Malcolm X died because he started to see all people. Him going to Mecca and seeing, wait a minute, they're all shades here. They're all, wait a minute, this ain't what I thought it was. It's like the and so inclusion, to be able to be in a room with Latin people and black people and Asian people and white people and whoever else, and just be an artist. To be an artist, there is nothing like it. There is nothing like finding your tribe, and they're of all colors, right? It's like black and Latino people are of all colors. You go to the Caribbeans, they're of all colors. um Growing up, and I don't know if this is true for you, but this was true for me. Growing up in Spanish Harlem, because I grew up on the border of Harlem and Spanish Harlem. I grew up on Fifth Avenue between 111 and 112th Street. So I
Oh, I
literally was on
know.
the border. If you crossed the street, you were in Harlem. If you were on the other side, you were in Spanish Harlem. So I always kid, and I always said in my act when I was doing stand up, I got the best of both ghettos. And
Yes,
I
indeed.
did, and I did. And one of the things that I was taught as a kid in Harlem, in Spanish Harlem, was that we were all together. be it the gay people, be it black people, be it the Jewish people, the Italian people. We were all part of this community. We were all, and we all looked out for each other. If
Yes.
somebody came from another neighborhood to mess with our wino, we were going to fight that person because that was our wino. If somebody messed with the drag queen, and we
Yes.
were going to mess with them, that there was a sense of taking care of your own, and it didn't matter who they were, but they were of your neighborhood. They were part
Mm-hmm.
of you, and that is a sense that I carry today. And I think for young people, it is important that they learn how to take care of each other, not separate, and as artists sometimes we and this is, we can be our own worst enemies, especially if we are of one community, one culture. It's like, when I first came, I'm half black and half Puerto Rican, so my mother was black, my father was Puerto Rican, so i always felt a um I always felt a kingship to both. And I remember in high school having to fill out, it was the first time I had to fill out, you know what your nationality was. And I would always put other, and I would get called to the office, and they would go, well, you got to pick one. I said, well, you bring my mother and father here, and you tell them they got to pick one, because I'm not going to pick one. That's how I'm not doing that. So I always put other. When I came to Los Angeles, because I had never experienced having to pick a side. And when I came to Los Angeles, I was 18 years old. I'm pursuing acting, and there was a Latino group, Nosotros, and then I wasn't really welcomed in that group, even though I imposed myself in that group because I come from New York. You impose yourself where you want to be. You don't leave. You
That's
impose
what we
yourself.
do.
But what I learned, and this was true for me growing up, the black community always embraced me. I was always embraced. The women from the South who would sit on the stoop, they always embraced me. I was always up under one of their skirts, just sitting there, listening, taking in.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but the Latin women, and it didn't matter if they were darker, if they were lighter, they were separate. And I found that to be true when I came out here. There was a separatism. Well, you're not Mexican. I was like, look, when white people see us, we're all Mexican. We're all Mexican in California. If you were in New York, you'd be Puerto Rican. That's how it is. They don't really care. They don't, that, and it still holds true today in that, um, they don't perceive you as a black from Canada or from London, or you are black. If you're Latin, they don't go, oh, well, you're Cuban or you're Dominican. They go, you in California, you Mexican. And we do, I say all this to say, sometimes we do ourselves an injustice instead of embracing ourselves. And so, there has to be a way where we come together and love all parts of ourselves as a whole, so
Absolutely.
that we can then show that to the world. It's like, what does the Bible tell us? The Bible tells us, love one another. The greatest commandment is that you love your neighbor as you love me. And
Right.
so we have to learn how to love ourselves and love our neighbor. And so, I can't love God if I don't love you. I can't. That goes against his principles. I don't care whose Bible you open up, it's the same passage.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't
Mm-hmm.
love you, I don't love God.
Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you so much for going into depth with this self hatred, that we possess, on sometimes on a deeper level, sometimes on a superficial level. But it comes from colonization.
Yes, it does.
It's a fallout of colonization. And when we understand where it comes from, and how systemic it is culturally, what we do is we work on, I say, forgiveness. We work on forgiving so that when I see or I experience that colorism within my family, who some have light eyes, some have darker skin. I mean, we've experienced it. All people of color have experienced colorism, and my antidote to that insidious cancer, because that's a cancer in a family, that's a cancer in a community. Oh, they're not good, they're not as good as us. Because if we didn't have that, we would all collectively come together and be collectively powerful in our voices and in our economic strength and political strength. And so clearly it's a divisive technique or tactic.
That's a spiritual battle. That's the demon that comes to steal, kill, and destroy, comes to separate, it comes to divide, to conquer.
And so what we do is we give grace. We give grace and forgiveness and sit down at tables, which I do all the time. And that's the wonderful thing and the wonderful joy of doing what I do, because I like to talk to people about the way they sound. I come in and ask people where they are from. And immediately they're put off because they think it's a pejorative, way in which I'm approaching them. And I then have to say to them or show them that I'm coming from a place of love and genuine curiosity, because I like the way you sound. I will never forget. I live out on the ocean and north of LA, and so we have great funky places to get fish and hang out. And so I went to my little one of my little funky places, and there was a woman in front of me, and she spoke Spanish unlike any Spanish I have heard. And I said, excuse me. I said, you speak Spanish beautifully. And she looked at me as if like, what?
What do you know? What do you know?
Yeah, exactly. How dare you tell me I speak Spanish beautifully? I was like, damn, you can't even give a compliment without people thinking you're trying to, burst their bubble. So I told her, this is what I do. I tell people this is what I do for a living. I have an ear. I listen to the way people sound because this is what I do. And if it's really tough, I tell them that this is what I do in movies for Hollywood. And then of course I become, oh, okay, what do you want to know? But it's so, once you sort of break the barrier, you break that wall of me versus them. I'm good, they're bad. My Spanish is great, their Spanish is not. And so this is what she said. She said, I'm Mexican. I said, oh, okay. She said, but my mother was a school teacher. See, that's the thing. When you get to know people, you go, okay, yes, you're not speaking Spanish because you're from Spain and you're all that. No, her mother was a school teacher. And you know that kids of school teachers, my son would attest to this, are different because we see our children are our students, are our guinea pigs, and it was so clearly evident in the way she spoke Spanish. It was crafted. It was like she was singing a song,
Mm,
you know and
mm.
and but the way she responded, her visceral knee-jerk response was like, what do you mean, what are you talking about? And so again, what you do is you offer grace. You offer, an alliance,
Mhm,
because
mhm,
I'm an ally. I'm telling you something that I'm appreciating in you.
mhm, mhm.
I think these conversations are so useful and necessary, because once we realize what the objective was to polarize Caribbean blacks from mainland American
That's right.
blacks, and
That's right.
it's to polarize us,
That's right.
and let's get even more, like, to polarize Jamaicans from Trinidadians,
That's right.
Bahamians. It's all polarizing because they knew if we came together, we'd outnumber them.
It goes back to the Tower of Babel in that
Yes,
all these people got together and said, we're going to build a tower so high we'll get to God. And so the languages at that point were changed. That's where you got
that's right.
different tribes and different tongues, and because unification brings things beyond your ability to even think of it. It's like we can do this together,
Exactly.
really.
There's
And
strength in
so
numbers.
that's right.
That's
That's
that's why
right.
I'm such a huge proponent of community. There are
Hmm.
three things that I subscribe to, and I would love for your audience to take this away, because there are three principles that have really made me not just the artist that I am, but the person, the human being that I am. And the first of them is the ability to use your voice to tell stories, to tell your story, to communicate ideas, to communicate stories that empower, that uplift, that change lives, stories that change the energy of the room, stories that amplify, because in the amplification, it changes the energy in the universe. It changes the tone in the universe. It just ever so slightly. The pendulum of justice weighs, it just swings further toward justice. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I want people to trust their internal GPS, to trust their instincts. I, for the most part, believe, no, I believe that people, for the most part, are inherently good. I believe that they change during the course of of their lives because traumatic things happen to them. And so when we really hone in to a spirit of gratitude, a spirit of grace, a spirit of forgiveness. And I'm not going to identify how that looks. That looks differently for everyone. And it far be it for me to say, well, this is how you forgive. No, because your forgiveness can look totally different. But inherently, a spirit of gratitude, grace, extending grace to people, because you don't know what they're going through. Because a lot of times people don't look like what they've been through or are going through. And we must extend grace. And then that third thing is forgiveness. And so that really sort of it hones an internal mechanism that gives you a sense of intuition, knowing what people need when they need it, and being a wonderful, responsible person of community. Part of the reason why I am celebrated at what I do, oh my gosh, I'm getting emotional because I'm so grateful, is I have an incredible ear that started when I sang opera at 14. I have an ear which lends itself to me being an incredible dialect coach because I can hear, which made me tell that woman, "Oh my gosh, your Spanish is so beautiful." I mean, the ear, but I also have this incredible intuition. I know why people sound the way they sound. I know a voice and what has happened to a voice to make it sound the way it sounds. Meaning, a lot of times I know the trauma just based on the way a voice sounds. I know the trauma that a person has experienced. I know the joy. I know where in the sibling structure, if they are the oldest, the middle child, or the baby, I can hear it in their voices. I have this gift
Mhm.
that it's God given, it's innate. And it I'm so blessed. I'm so grateful.
That is your ministry.
It is my ministry.
That is your ministry.
It really is.
We don't realize all the time that ministry looks different on everybody. You don't have
Absolutely.
to be on a pulpit or in a pulpit or
That's
around a
right.
pulpit to have a ministry.
Mm-hmm.
The three components you just gave as you were talking, it is God. It is God. It's the Trinity. It's God. If we are walking with God, however we see the creator, if we
However
walk
you
with
see
the
it.
creator,
Yeah,
if we are walking with the spirit, not a spirit, because there's a lot of spirits out there, but if we're walking with the spirit, then we are going to walk in love, we're going to walk in compassion, we're going to walk in grace, we're going to walk in forgiveness, because you
that's right.
cannot walk with God and not walk in forgiveness. You
That's right.
cannot walk with God and not walk in love.
Right.
And it brings me back to breath. Your book, breath is all over it. The exercises of breathing, and what struck me was God gave us breath. God gave us breath, which is why we breathe, which is why we are alive.
To wrap up the spirituality component of our discussion, which I am so grateful for. Thank you. Thank you, because it's such a huge part of what voice is for me, is is a spiritual deep connection to source. That's breath, and that's how I do a deep connection to source, which is breath, which is where I say, which is where spirit lives, which is where God lives. There are two things I want to say. One is a wonderful anecdote from Mahershala Ali. Mahershala and I got very, very friendly, and he's my bonus son. I say son, but I told him this last time. I said, "You know, I'm not old enough to be your mother, so you're my nephew, okay?" But clearly, that's he's really family, and he. I asked him, where did he start? What was his process? What's the first thing you ask yourself when you pick up a script and you read it? What's the first thing you ask yourself about the character? He wants to know what the character's spiritual journey is. He said, that's the first thing. He said, and if in fact they have no spiritual journey, that's equally as important. And I thought, oh my gosh, as an actress, I never asked that question. No acting teacher ever said, well, let's start with the spiritual component. And this is why no acting teacher ever, in my knowledge, I'm sure there's some out there that do have a spiritual component to this art form. But when I left Cal Arts, because I came to Cal Arts in 2000, left Juilliard to go to Cal Arts because of their wonderful vision of what art could look like in the 21st century, multimedia approach to art and theater. But by 2012, I had had enough. And the straw that broke the camel's back was I it was the end of the semester in 2012, and I was up for contract renewal. Every odd year we come in up for contract renewal. So I had another year before my contract ended, because we were 2-year contracts. And I go into the dean's office and he says, so how was your year? And I said, it's wonderful. My students this, my students that, blah, blah, blah. I'm going on and on. And I finish and he says, well, that's not what I'm hearing. And I said, what? He said, yes. He gives me two reviews of my class, just two. And I'm teaching 60 students, but he pulls out two students who had remarked that I talk about spirituality too much. And I said, "Oh, well, no one's ever mentioned that to me." He says, "Well, Denise, I think you need to stick to the curriculum." And I said, "That's going to be a little difficult. I wish I could say that I can stick to the curriculum, but spirituality is at the base, something spiritual." And then I said, and I'm a Christian, but I want you to know that I don't come in quoting Bible verses, and I don't come in, espousing Christian dogma. I'm not talking about Christianity. I'm not even talking about religion. What I talk about is a spiritual presence that fuels our art, that fuels breath, that, in my opinion, is the basis of voice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He says, "I recommend that you stick to the curriculum. And I want to make sure that you do that. And just to ensure that you do that, I'm not going to extend your contract until next year, after you've proven that you stick to the curriculum." And I said, "Okay." And I walked out of his door. I slammed the door. I said, "I ain't a curricular bitch."
And that is all she wrote. That's
I
it.
ain't a curricular bitch. And ain't nobody going to tell me how to do
Mm,
this.
mm, mm,
And
mm.
by the fall of the following year, I gave notice.
Wow.
The fall of the following year, I came back the fall semester, and that was my last chance and my last time there. And I prayed and I said, "You are forcing me out of here because I need to teach this in a way that feels what, in your words, is my ministry. And I'm not going to have anybody shape it to their benefits for fear of being sued, because higher education was going in a direction now that they were operating from a place of fear. They were reactionary, because kids were spending 50 and 60 and sometimes $80,000 a year for an education. And so all the power came into their hands and the hands of their family when they're paying these exorbitant amount of dollars. Then they get to say how they want the curriculum done. And I thought, it's time for me to exit higher education.
Well, what you didn't know was that he wasn't pushing you out. There was an open door that you needed to go. Had that conversation not happened, you wouldn't have been able to go through that door. And actors in the Hollywood community would not have benefited from what you have. What I love that you have accomplished in the last uh, 12, 15 years is that you have touched actors like Will Smith and Mahershala Ali and Taraji P Henson and Ellen Burstyn.
Ellen
Ellen
Burstyn.
Burstyn. You have
Yes,
touched these
yes,
people in
yes,
a way that they have been able to transform their work. The Halle Berrys and the list
yes.
goes on. That
And I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have
that's
done that.
right.
That's
So
your point.
he did
Yes,
you a solid, that
yes,
what the devil intended for evil, God was working out for good. See, I don't care what anybody says. I didn't grow up in the church, but I've always known God and I love God and I'm a respecter of God. And if someone tells me I can't talk about God, then I can't be in that room. And so I totally get you. But what he did was he was ushering you where you needed to be. And
yes,
sometimes, as actors, as creatives, we don't know that because we get too comfortable in that space. And God says, I got something else for you to go. You got to go. I got somewhere else for you to go. Let's go. We got to go. And you wouldn't have left if he had not said that to you.
Absolutely. No, I would not have left. I would not have left because I'm going to tell you, it gets even better. It gets even better. because everything is fear based. It's like, okay, so I need this paycheck. How can I survive if I don't have this cushion? I need the safety net, you know? And that's what faith is. Faith is the safety net. God is the safety net. But let me tell you what it forced me to do. It forced me to look into my pension because I knew that my pension, unlike I didn't know because Juilliard's pension you couldn't touch until you were 64.
Mm.
Well, I thought that was the case with every pension. Oh no, with CalArts pension, I could touch it at 55. And guess what? I was 55.
Oof,
I kid you
Jesus.
not. I was not 54.
Thank you.
I was not 53. I was
Thank you.
55. And
Thank
I
you.
don't know what made me call to see because I thought, oh, well, I can't touch my pension till I'm in my 60s. She said, no, no, no. You're eligible for your pension. I pulled down my pension and I was out of there, baby. And it was just enough of a cushion until I got
But that was the spirit saying to you, I got you,
I
girl. I
got
got
you.
you covered.
I
Don't worry
got
about
you.
it. I
And
got you
I
can go.
think this is so multifaceted in a time such as this where a lot of actors are not auditioning. We need this is storytelling. What I just did is what I stand on. Stories that uplift, stories that change the energy, stories that help you feel okay. The same God that did it for her will do it for me. Because I tell people all the time, this is what I used to say. Oprah was my paragon of black feminine empowerment. And I'm so grateful. I had, thanks to David Oyelowo, had the pleasure of meeting her and hanging out with her. But I can remember saying when I was in my 20s, 30s, I would say, you know what, Mom? I love the success that this woman has gotten. I said, but you know, her success is her success, and mine has my name on it. And God doesn't love her any more than he loves me.
That's
And
right.
so it's just a
Amen.
matter of time. The same way he
Amen.
blessed her, he's going to bless me. And I can
Amen.
remember saying that. My mom reminded me when things started coming around. She said, do you remember what you said about Oprah? I said, I sure do. She said, God's given you, God's coming up, coming through. And I said, he always does, and I just want to be in a position to give it away. I mean that. I mean, give it all away. I love, I love, people are now helping me learn how to receive because I love giving so much and I'm starting to learn how to receive. Because one person said, Denise, what if I took the joy away from you? The joy that you feel in giving me a gift. That joy. I said, I love giving. She says, well, don't take it away from me when I give you a gift.
Mm. Mm.
I said, okay, I received that. Thank you. She said, I feel the same way giving you gifts.
I think that's important for women to sit with and take in because we are the nurturers, we are
Yes.
the givers, we are the ones that are always giving. And it is
Mm-hmm.
because that's something I'm learning as well. It that we have to, if we're praying to God to give us blessings, then we have to be okay with people giving us because God is using
That's
people to
right.
give us. Just
Yes.
like we give freely, we give whoever we have no problems in giving. We don't withhold anything.
That's right. We have no limitations,
As
right?
mothers, we don't withhold. So
Right.
we have to be okay with,
Receiving.
I receive it, Lord. And
Yes.
I just want to ask you one question.
Sure.
Manifestation. How do you speak? Because you just said something, you started speaking. How do you speak those things for yourself into existence and teach your students to speak that into existence? As we're talking of the breath, that life and death is in the power of the tongue. So when we connect breath to our speaking voice, and then we connect it to story. How do we tell good stories about ourselves to people?
That's a wonderful question because it really does tie in acting technique. People say acting is doing. We have objectives and then we have actions. We use verbs to do. How I manifest is by doing, not just by speaking. I speak it, I see it, I see it, I visualize it, and then I speak it. I speak it out, I speak it internally. I may tell someone that this is what I'm manifesting because I like to give life to it. A lot of times people say, oh, don't tell people what you're doing because they'll sabotage. I believe that God directs me to the right people to tell because they will not sabotage. They'll be praying for me. They are just as excited for my manifestation as I am. And so I speak it to them. But the third thing is doing what I do instinctively, and I don't do it for return. But once I saw it happening, it was just, I kid you not, I give, I give, I give. And I kid you not, Lydia, it is the exponential turnaround of how it comes back, the law of reciprocity. It just, and if I can just explain this, when artists are stuck, when you're stuck, go teach a young kid how to act. When you can't buy an audition, go gather a group of friends and say, let's meet at my apartment and let's just do monologues. Giving, that's community, that's giving it away, as opposed to sitting there in fear. You're now actively activating the law of reciprocity. It works. It absolutely works. I give away so much because I get so much. I don't give away a fraction of what I get. And I don't mean monetarily. I mean spiritually. So I just wanted to share that, what happened at Cal Arts that led me into this, what Mahershala said, and it's all spirit based. And how can I stick to a curriculum that that I become a robot?
And I love that threefold chord you just gave as an example of manifestation. It's the visualizing, it's the speaking, and most importantly, it's the
The
doing.
doing.
That manifestation cannot come if you don't take an action, right? You have
Yes.
to see it, you have to
Yes.
speak it, and then you have to take an action. It's
Yes.
like a class. You
Yes.
cannot just be an auditor. You have to participate. You have to activate what
Yes.
you're learning. It's that thing of when you learn something, teach it to somebody else so you can retain it. And on that note, I want to say to everybody, if you are an actor, it doesn't matter how long you've been doing it, this book will help you. And I highly recommend you not only pick up this book, but you download the audio, because it will make a radical difference. It will help you. And then at the end of the book, at the end of the audio, she gives you an hour and a half class for you to break up and do in a month period. It is phenomenal. She's really thought this through. Denise Woods is fire. She is amazing.
Thank you.
She offers you not just breathing, not just relaxation, not just story, but she offers you everything that she has in her toolkit. And I say, thank you, Denise. Don't forget to check out our voices on the yard, because it really is a bunch of master classes of how actors come together, not only to share what they learned from Juilliard, but to share how they are living their lives as full artists. Amazing. Thank you so much. Oh my God. Wasn't that interview fantastic? And Denise Woods, her voice is like butter. It is so soft and so silky and so velvety. I want to be like her when I grow up. I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. And while you're there, why don't you buy me a coffee? And don't go anywhere, because coming up, we have another fantastic interview for you right now.